what up, everyone? Welcome to the Portal Room. It's your boy Paul. Tonight, again, we're doing another solo one. My co-host Christian is not in tonight. He's gigging it up. So everybody in the chat, thanks so much for showing up tonight. We got a good one. We got a member of the UFO community who has been researching the topic for years at this point, since the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. He's an experiencer. He's been a part of several different UFO communities, along with uh, radio experience, media experience. So we're going to get into the gambit of our good friend, John Strader. Welcome to the show, John. Hey, how's it
What's
going?
up, people? What's up? Welcome aboard to the Paul's Portal. I love it. I see some names
Awesome,
I
awesome.
know in the chat. Good to see you guys.
Well, first off, John, how you doing tonight? How's it going?
Good, good. Actually, pretty good. My daughter just got back from college, so I went and helped her move down, and so I'll get to see her over the summer. And for those of you who knew I was going through some health issues, I seem to be doing pretty well on that front. Hanging with the roommates, watching some, Survivor, old Survivor series. Love Survivor. So yeah, doing good, chilling out.
I love it. Well, I'm glad you're reconnecting with your daughter. From what you've told me, I think in the past she's in another state or another city in college and whatnot. So that's always nice to hear.
Yeah, it's I definitely miss her when she's gone. She definitely is well aware of my UFO obsession and has seen shit with me herself. So she believes because she's seen.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we got a lot of good people in the chat. They're ready to check out John's entire story here. So
Oh
John,
gosh.
let's get into the backstory. Let's get into
Uh-oh.
how far back this starts and how you got involved into researching, and also how you got involved into the UFO community and so forth. So let's start from the beginning.
Whew. Well, just stop me whenever you need, Paul, because it's long. I'm old. So when you're as old as me and you've been around as long as me, it's old. And I kind of, it's weird because like when I look at my UFO experience, it's out of order in the timeline. You know what I mean? Because there was a lot of things that was happening to me when I was younger that I didn't understand. I had no idea what any of that meant. And it wasn't until the summer that I turned 17 that I had a series of events that sort of started me down the path. And so that's kind of how I normally tell the story, because I don't think of it in the linear. I always think of it as how I discovered stuff in my
Right.
mind, and that's kind of when it all happened. So if that's where you want me to start, I can start there.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, let's start there. And then if we need to backpedal a little bit, we can do that. I told you beforehand, if we need to do a part two, we can. And
Well,
yeah,
I ramble on. I do ramble on. So,
let's
just wrangle
yeah.
me in when you need to. So,
It can't be
um,
as it can't be as bad as Rob Wood, is what I'll say.
oh,
We have
did
to have
Rob
two
go on
part
and on?
twos.
Okay.
He's a
Well,
good
we'll
dude.
see if I can condense. I'll leave certain names, places. No. Okay. So I grew up in a place called Angel Fire, New Mexico, and it's a very small little mountain resort community east of Taos, New Mexico. Most people have probably heard of Taos, the Pueblo there, the ski valley, things like that. But Angel Fire is just a tiny little place on the other side of the mountain, and it when I moved there in 79. And so, I mean, literally, there was one stop sign. There was no police there. It was very, very tiny. And so, but it was populated by a lot of Vietnam vets. A huge amount of Vietnam vets moved up there with their families, and just to get away from the world, because the world was not kind in the 70s and early 80s to the Vietnam vets. So they wanted to be somewhere where they could kind of be away from the world, have a beautiful place to be, but also kind of commingle. So my stepdad, who she married a man up there, was an ex Air Force Vietnam and Korean pilot, and so were many of the other people there. So and that'll make sense later. So, I grow up there, and we're up the ski area, right? So I would ski, and there was, when you get to the top of the mountain there, you'd have a view over the whole valley. And the thing about Angel Fire is it's in a north-south valley called the Merino Valley. And so Angel Fire is kind of at the south end, and then Eagle Nest and the lake is kind of at the north end. And Wheeler Peak is up here. That's the highest mountain in New Mexico. And then on the other side of that is the Taos Ski Valley. So you can see the entire valley from the top of our ski area. And so we looked out one day, me and my friend, who will remain nameless, and saw this beautiful, like, high mountain plain that was like inaccessible. Like, it was part of a private ranch. It still is today. You cannot get up there. And it's on the other side of the Philmont Scout Ranch. So if anyone who's been Boy Scout went up to Philmont, it's really far from anywhere. And so we saw this spot. We were like, dude, we should go there and like camp out there over the summer, find a way in, because if we can get to that one spot, we can have a view of the whole valley and we can just hang out. And so, oh my gosh, Cheesy Elbows talking about enemy helos. Oh, that's a whole nother story. Don't get me distracted with that. I'll dive right down the rabbit hole on the enemy helicopters story for sure. And so that summer, my friend and I was 17. We took my Blazer, which was a 4-wheel drive Chevy, which we could get way up, and like literally went on these logging roads and like really 4-wheeling, and actually had to like cut a fence to kind of get in there. It was a private ranch. Sorry about that, rancher. And it took us all day, and we got to this spot that we had seen in the winter. And so we decided to camp out, and we can see the entire mountain valley. Now I'm telling this story kind of out of order, because really there was 3 events that happened, and they were all sort of sequential. And this is kind of the last event. So I don't know if I should even start with this, or I should go back and start with the, let me rewind. I'm sorry. I told you this is going to happen,
fine.
Paul.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine.
Okay.
Let's start wherever you want to start. And by the way, you had a comment right here if you want to read that real quick.
I can't.
It's on our screen. It's on our
that's
screen,
funny,
right?
Mandopolis. Mandy, hi, Mandy. Oh, that's funny. That's a good one. His shirt wouldn't fit me. He's tiny. I'm huge. So we'll go back to early April, late March. So the story I was telling you was June, okay? But in late March, April, I don't know exactly the dates, I was doing a play in at the Taos High School, Grease. We were doing Grease. So I used to stay after school very late, and we would do rehearsals, right? And so I had a part in the play. We won't go into that, but I had a part. So I was there, and so one of the nights I used to stay the night over with friends some nights when I would be there late, but it was like a Friday night, and I had to work the next morning because I always worked. And so I had to go home that night. Well, it's a blizzard, and it is just coming down, and everyone's freaked out. They're like, you shouldn't drive in the blizzard and this and that, whatever. But I was 17, completely fearless, had a great 4-wheel drive, and felt like there was nothing on the planet that could stop me. So I'm going. So I called my mom. There's no cell phones, guys. This is 85. Call my mom, say, hey, I'm getting ready to leave now. I'll see you in an hour and a half, whatever. I don't know how bad the pass is, but I'll make it. Don't worry. I'll be there. So I'm driving. And this is that kind of snow, for those of you who've grown up in the snow, where it's coming down so hard and the flakes are huge. And if you put on the brights, it's like that Millennium Falcon going to light speed effect. It's like too much. So you have to keep your dims on, right? So I'm driving through this very mountainy road, the Palo Flechado Pass, on my way towards Angel Fire. And one of the things you'll know when you're in mountains and you're in that kind of scenario is if there's a car coming around the corner, like you can see the lights coming before you get to the corner. So you can see whether they would be up on the trees or whatever. So I'm coming, and I'm pretty gripped because it's intense. It's very bad blizzard. I really should not have been on the road, but I'm driving through. I'm going slow. My fingers are like gripped on the steering wheel, and I'm getting to this corner, and it is so bright coming around I mean, it's just so bright. And all I can think is, well, it must be like some 18-wheeler coming around the corner. Like, what's it doing in this blizzard? It's coming around this corner. It's going to be so bright. I'm scared. So I remember the last thing is like, I'm scared as I'm coming around the corner thinking I'm going to get in a head-on collision with a giant 18-wheeler. It's so bright. And it kind of has a yellow tinge on top. So I was thinking, oh, it's got the yellow lights and then the regular lights. And I come around the corner, and the next thing I know, it's 2.5, maybe 3 hours later. I don't know exactly. I didn't really look at my watch in those days.
Yeah.
But it's been a couple hours. I'm about a mile, maybe a mile and a half down the road, which there's many curves on the road between where my last memory is and where I ended up. And I ended up, my car is in a snowbank, and it's just in a snowbank, and it's just running, and it's just happening, and it's not frozen over. The snow is still coming down. And I wake up and I just have this thought in my head, like, wow, you fell asleep at the wheel. You're lucky to be alive. You crash into a snowbank, drive home. And I just had these thoughts that just kind of kept going in my head, lucky to be alive, crash into a snowbank, fell asleep at the wheel, drive home. So I was like, whoa, I fell asleep at the wheel. I crashed into a snowbank. Holy shit. Like I better drive home. And I just put it in gear. It was not in gear. It was in neutral. Put it in gear, back out of this like snowbank, which is, like on a mountain road, you have those pull-offs, like on a curve, like an overlook.
Right.
So it was kind of one
Yeah.
of those. And the snow had been plowed up from other storms. And so I was just parked against it. But I back out and I drive home. Well, I get home and my mom's in a panic. They had closed the pass, so no one knew where I was. I hadn't come out. They were worried I was dead. And I was like, I'm fine. I fell asleep at the wheel. Sorry, I crashed into a snowbank. I'm good. Everything's fine. They had called the sheriffs, but they're like, well, the pass is closed. We can't get in there right now. And so that was it. Like, I didn't really think about it. You know what I mean? I didn't think about it. But the next day I realized I have this like injury on my leg, and that'll become important later. But it's like a almost perfectly round scoop mark right on my shin, where it's like bone is gone, like,
Wow.
and it was like perfectly cauterized. There was no blood down my leg. And at the time I wasn't thinking like, what did this happen? I just instantly thought, oh, I must have hit my leg on the car when I crashed, right? That's how
How
you
big
get an
was
injury.
that? How big was the hole?
Well, shit. Not very big. It was, small. But it
Kind of
was,
small.
but
Okay.
yeah, it was just a little. I wish I had something that I could. Not much bigger than the Sharpie. You know what I mean? Oh, Mendopoulos, don't even start me on my lab. So we'll get to that. So yeah, so I have this like memory thing, right? And I have this little weird scoop out of me, and I don't think about it. I'm like, whew, got home, whatever, blah blah blah, move along. So then, a couple weeks later, the play's done, and this is not a UFO story, but it's related. You'll see. So, and I can't tell the whole story, but it's a pretty fun story. But so I'm 17 years old, a senior in high school. I'm getting ready to go to prom. It's a couple weeks before prom, and all of a sudden, my urine flow just stops. It goes to a standstill. I can't pee. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm totally embarrassed. I don't want to tell anybody. I'm like, oh my God, my penis isn't working. This is bad. And I, tell my mom, and she's like, oh shit, we'll take you to the hospital in Taos. So we go to the hospital in Taos. I have to drink all this kind of stuff, and I have to sit there in front of like this nurse and like pee in front of I had to drink like some sort of radioactive fluid, and then I had to wait for it to go in. Then I had to pee in front of an X-ray so they could see. And like, oh, you've got some sort of major blockage. We can't take care of this here in Albuquerque, in Taos. You're going to have to go to Albuquerque. Now, this is the week before prom, and I'm like, holy crap! Like, my dick's broken. Like, this is
Horrible timing.
This is horrible. Like, well, not even just timing. Like, I can't let anyone know, especially my brother, who's a giant fucking tattletale, right? He's younger than me. Both go to the same school. And so we have to make up this whole story, right? With my mother, my mother's in on it, and stepdad. We make up this whole story about I got to go for some other appointment, blah, blah, blah. I got stuff. I have to go to Albuquerque. We make up this total bullshit story so nobody knows what's wrong with my wee-wee. And I go down and I do this whole thing. And so when the urologist like checks me out, the first thing he says is, did you get kicked by a horse? And I'm like, what? Kicked by a horse in the nuts? I'm like, no. He goes, well, did you have any kind of injury there? Did you have anything there? I'm like, no, nothing at all. So he's like, well, it doesn't make sense. You have a lot of scar tissue in there. Something has definitely happened in there. We're going to have to operate. We're going to have to go in there and like cut out all this stuff so you can pee. And so that was scheduled for Friday. Prom is Saturday. So I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm out for prom. It's not going to happen. So I'm bummed out, right? And so I'm staying in Albuquerque. You know, there's no phones, like I said, no cell phones. Nobody in Taos knows where I am. No one knows anything. And on Thursday we get pulled in, and they say, well, we're gonna have to postpone to Monday because the anesthesiologist can't make it tomorrow for whatever reason. So we're gonna postpone to Monday. And I'm like, well, does that mean I can go to prom tomorrow? And he's like, well, because they had put a little stint in there. They had to put a little like tube inside to keep it open so I could pee, right? So I had this little thing inside of me. He's like, well, you've got that stint in there and this and that. He goes, but I don't want to keep you from your senior prom. So yes, you can go to prom, but here's your rules. No drinking, no dancing, no fun of any kind, right? So I won't go into the whole prom story because that is a wild story. But regardless, I end up going up there. And it's hard to not tell the other parts of the story because it's so integral. But let's just say that the week I was gone, it was kind of like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Everyone was wondering where I was. Nobody knew. The rumors were flying. And meanwhile, unbeknownst to me, Life magazine was at the prom, which for kids today, Life magazine was a big deal in those days.
Yeah.
Big deal. Not as much anymore, but in those days, Life magazine was the shit, right? And so they had decided they were doing a story on proms in America. And for some reason, they chose Taos as one of the places they were going to cover. So when these people show up to Taos High School that week to start doing interviews with people, teachers, people, to see kind of who they're going to follow, like they wanted to follow like a certain student through the process of prom. Well, I guess my name kept coming up, and my roommate who's here was there, and he has a lot of stories about that week because there was a lot going on, and everyone, it was like a mystery where I was, what's going on. No one believed the cover story. He should be here. Maybe he'll be here tomorrow. And for some reason, these Life magazine people just didn't decide to just move on to somebody else that was there. They were obsessed with, well, we got to meet the Strader guy. He sounds fascinating. So thank you, Mandy. You're distracting me with your comments. And so I show up on the Friday afternoon because I drive up real quick on Friday, and they had a little booth set up to sign up for prom. So I run into the high school and I go to the booth. I'm like, okay, I need a ticket for prom. And they're like, no, you have to have two people. You have to have a couple. We won't let singles. I'm like, what? It's the day before the prom. There's not going to be anyone. So regardless, I run all over. I mean, that's a whole nother story, but I find a date and I'm like, okay, whew, and I take off and I go over the mountain to Angel Fire. Well, the word had gotten out. Strader's in the high school. Strader's in the high. He's been seen here. He was seen there. And so everyone is like scrambling, trying to find me. Where is he? Well, I'm gone. So I go back over to Angel Fire. I didn't have a tuxedo, but I worked at the country club. So I kind of like assembled a sort of Miami Vice version of a tuxedo with like Sperry topsiders with no socks that were all torn up. And I just sort of create my own thing. I have a cummerbund. I have a little tie. I have, this old coat of my grandfather's. So I put together this ensemble and I go to prom. And I mean, that's, like I said, that's a crazy story. But the main point is I end up like getting sort of accosted by these Life magazine people. And I'm just like, and they're like, we got to talk to you. We got to interview you. And I'm like, I don't know who you are. I don't know why you're here. I don't know anything about this. And I'm in shock because the last thing I want to do is talk to people about where I've been all week because, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I don't want some like newspaper people interviewing me about what's going on and where have I been and what's going on. So I end up bailing out of the prom early. I don't go to the after party. I just bail. So that Sunday, I come home back to Albuquerque. That Monday, I have the surgery, and then like on the Tuesday, I'm recovering, and the Life magazine lady calls me. Somehow she's now figured out I'm in the hospital. They've done this procedure, and she does this whole interview with me, which I had a horrible prom. I mean, the story of the prom, it's like one of the worst nights of my life, and it's now immortalized for life on Life magazine. And so I'm just like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And so I just kind of forget about it, get back to school, get through the last few weeks and whatever. Okay. So all that happens. But I never put two and two together about what this thing was that happened to me, why I have this injury, where the scoop mark came from. None of that is like, I'm not making any connections. It's just all like
Right.
weird things that happened to me that I didn't understand. Right. So then we'll fast forward to my friend and I are now checking out this camping spot. And we get there, and so it's, June 85. We have a perfect view of the entire valley, and it's just amazing. And we're watching satellites and stuff, and we can, the random airplane. This is 1985, so there was a lot less stuff in the sky. And the satellites back then were much bigger. So you could easily see them, and you could predict when they'd come back around in 90 minutes. And so we were watching everything in the sky. We were not drunk. We weren't drinking. We were only 17, but we were just hanging out. We had a little fire, and we're just watching shit, right? And so then all of a sudden, across the valley, below the mountain peak of Wheeler Peak, this bright light just bing appears. And we're like, whoa, what is that? And we're like checking it out. And so immediately the wheels are turning, like, what could that be? It just sort of appeared out of nowhere. And what's it doing lower than the mountain? And it's not like flying. It's just sort of bobbing. It's not doing much. And every once in a while, it kind of go down below like one of the other peaks and then pop back up. And like there's ridges. And so it would like sort of disappear and then pop back up, and it would like light the ridge as it would go over it. And so we thought, oh, it's got to be like a helicopter search and rescue looking for like lost hikers, because every once in a while there'd be lost hikers over there off the side of the mountain. So we thought,
Right.
it's got to be what it is. It's the only thing that makes sense, right? So we're watching it, and it's sort of going south, just kind of cruising along, and it's almost to the part where we can see the cars coming through the pass. And then all of a sudden it just stops moving, shoots straight in the sky, higher than the mountains, everything, shoots straight up, and then just goes pew, and just disappears to the south. I
Gone.
mean, like that. And
Wow.
we're both like, what the, whoa. But me, I'm panicking instantly. And I don't normally panic, Paul, but I'm feeling this like fight or flight, like strong. And I'm like, oh shit. Where, what? And I'm
Is it gonna
looking,
come back or something? Yeah.
yes, I'm like, holy shit. I'm looking everywhere in the sky. Like, is it coming? Like, oh my God, that was a UFO. Holy crap. That was absolutely a UFO. We don't know what a UFO means, but whatever it was, that wasn't a helicopter. That wasn't a plane. I don't know what it was, but we're panicking. So we're looking everywhere. And my friend is just kind of like, huh? He's still sort of stumped, but I'm like literally feeling panic. And then I look to the north and I see two more lights, and they're coming this way, but they're flashing on and off. And then I hear it. And they pass our position, and you see each one has a single like exhaust nozzle. So it's F-16. It's the one with the single nozzle.
Right.
And they're hauling ass. And this is like 2:30, maybe 3 in the morning. I don't know. But they're hauling ass in the direction of that thing that just took off, right? But they never got close. I promise you, they never were within visual sight of it. They didn't see it. They did not like come up on it and then it took off. It was gone.
It was gone. Yeah.
Gone before they came in. So when I see that, and then I'm like, holy shit, Air Force jets are chasing that thing. That's it. We're out of here. So I freak out. I start pouring the little water we have on the fire. I'm kicking dirt on the fire. I'm putting that fire out. I'm looking everywhere. My friend, who's very Christian, is like, why are you so scared? What's going on? I'm like, dude, that was a UFO. It was like aliens. Like, the Air Force is chasing. We got to get the fuck out of here. That's all I can think is panic, get me the fuck off this mountain right now. They're coming. That's all I can think. I don't know why I'm thinking this, but that's what I'm thinking. And I'm just like, fuck that. So we put the shit out, we jump into the car, and we just haul ass out of there. And I'm telling you, like, I almost broke my car getting us out of there because I was driving like a maniac down what were not even roads to get off that mountain. And it took us a couple hours, but I'm like just raging down the mountain. We get him home. And so that next day, I'm trying to talk to my stepdad, who's Air Force. And I'm like, I tell him what I see, and he just kind of laughs, kind of, oh, yeah, you saw a UFO. And I'm like, I'm not making this up. I'm like, da 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 da. And I'm trying to like explain to him. And they're just laughing at me. They're just looking at me like I'm nuts. And I'm like, this sucks. This sucks. I can't even talk to them about it. I thought they would explain it to me. They're Air Force. Like, I'm like, those were Air Force jets. They had you. What do you mean you don't know? What do you think? I'm crazy? This sucks. So I'm trying to get answers, and the stigma was instant. You know, like really, like you better stop talking crazy. And I was like, oh fuck. So I talked to my friend whose dad was an Air Force test pilot. Supposedly had, according to him back in the day, had flown SR-71s for the Air Force testing. So that means he probably was out at Area 51. But I knew he was he was a colonel, and he had, you know, I never personally met him, but I just knew he was like legend, right? And but he was living there with his mom and stepdad, who was not military. And so he was going to go visit his dad at the end of the summer. And I'm like, dude, you have to, your dad will know. He'll know. He was working at the, you know, top secret facilities. He was a test pilot. He's going to know. Like, you're going to know. I didn't know about Area 51 at this point, but I knew, you know, he was, you know, a test pilot. He's going to be in the know. So I'm like, you got to talk to your dad. So end of the summer comes, he goes, talks to his dad, comes back, won't talk to me, won't look at me, is shunning me completely. And we're good friends. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, so I keep trying to like,
friend or his dad is doing this?
No, his dad is not in Angel Fire. He went and visited his dad. He comes back at the end of the summer, and he now won't talk to me. And I'm like, what is the deal? And we drive over the mountain to school together. So he'd get in the car, and I couldn't like bring it up in front of my brother and other friends who just all thought we would be crazy. So I'm like, whenever I'd get a second alone, I'm like, dude, did you talk to your dad? What is you? And he's like, I can't talk to you. And he would just like, was like scared, and he wouldn't talk to me, which I'm a tenacious person, and it irritated me. So, and this went on for weeks, you know, maybe a month and a half. I'm pretty sure it was into October when finally I'm like, hey, we're going to this party. You know, I'll pick you up. We'll take you to the party. He didn't have a car. So he's like, okay. So I pick him up, and instead of going to a party, I just drive up into the mountains and I park. I'm like, okay, we're not coming down. So you fucking tell me what the fuck. And at first he's very hesitant, and I'm just on him. I'm like, dude, you fucking saw the same thing I did. I know you talked to your dad. You have to tell me. You cannot fucking. And I was just like, roar. And so he admits to me, okay, yes, I talked to my dad, but you can't tell this story. You can't talk about it. I'll never admit it. And basically he tells me that he is up there, starts telling his dad the story. His dad freaks out immediately, grabs him, drags him, runs him into his like office, turns on some music and shit, like paranoid, and sits him down, and it's like, he's like, what's wrong, Dad? What's wrong? You know, like, and he was like in a panic, like, am I crazy? Am I making this up? And his dad's like, no, you're not crazy, son. You saw what you saw, but I can't tell you anything about it except that it's the most highly classified thing in the government. But you saw what you saw. You're not crazy, but you can't talk about this. He goes, I don't want you talking about this. I don't want you looking into this. And he gives him a whole list of like rules. Don't put your name on lists. Don't check out books. Don't like all this fucking spycraft shit. Like, don't do any of A, B, C, or D because you'll get on a list. And he's like, and I can't be. He goes, so you just have to forget about this and never talk about it. And so he admitted to me that, and I was like, holy shit. So then my wheels are just turning, right? So now I'm like, okay, whoa, this is crazy. So I'm starting to like logically sort of put everything together. I'm like, okay, UFOs, real. What they are, don't know, but UFO, unidentified flying objects, real. Air Force knows. Big secret being kept. So they're lying to the public. And they can obviously track it because those jets weren't just cruising around and ran into it. They had to have been, they had to be vectored in. They had to have been vectored in. So I start looking at where are the closest Air Force bases, and there's a base up by Colorado Springs, and then the other one would have been like Kirtland, but they didn't come from the south, which was Albuquerque, Kirtland. So I assume that they came from the base that was close to Colorado Springs, which is where NORAD is, and they had to have tracked this thing, whether or not now the thing that makes me think that it didn't just appear out of nowhere, that it might have moved so fast from some other location and then stopped, and that's when we saw it. I don't know. Oh, I'm on that list, Mandy, for sure now. But I knew like that had to have been tracked. So if it just appeared out of nowhere, I don't think that would have. There's no way they would have had time to then scramble these jets, have them fly all the way to there. It was pretty quick. So all I could think as a now 18-year-old kid was, holy shit, like this is serious. And because my friend's dad was so panicked and freaked out about it, I have to take this seriously. So that's when I started my investigations, right? So I start like going to libraries, the Taos Library at school, just finding anything I could, but never checking out the book. I'd read it there, or I would Xerox certain pages that I'd find interesting, or, whatever, trying to look into Blue Book, doing everything I can, but never putting my name on anything, never checking out anything, nothing like that. And if I bought a book, I would pay cash. I wouldn't write a check or anything. And so I start kind of looking into it, right? But I realized pretty quickly, anyone I try to talk to about this just instantly shits on you. And I did not want to be taken. I wanted to be taken seriously. So I was like, okay, I can't talk about this to anybody unless I can get into with the right people who, seem to have similar vibes. So it was kind of like, okay, now I'm all alone and I don't know who to talk to or what to do. So I'm looking into books, and then I don't know whether it was 87 or 88. Around there, I see the book Communion, and I freak out. And this is a common story. People who see the gray for the first time, that face. And I remember seeing it, and all the hair on my neck went up, and I just got chills. And I'm like, holy shit, there's something about that thing that freaks me out. And I don't know why. I'm like, whoa, what the fuck?
You just had that innate reaction.
100%. It just freaked me out. So I'm like, I got to read this book.
John, real quick, because there was several little things in the middle of your story that I wanted to highlight real quick.
All right.
So Mendy had put, is it Paul? Not that one. Sorry. Paul Vidal had said, were they tracking the UFO or were they involved? And then Mendy's follow-up, jets can escort experimental craft. That's another great point. And then right here, this is a question for you. John, do you think John Alexander is the one maintaining that list?
Mandy, you are going right to the heart of shit. Woo, you're burning me. That's very, very interesting, because everything she's mentioning is stuff that I've figured out later on. Now, another story, which I'll tell when we keep moving along, the 97 story, that could definitely be an escort type mission, because it's the second time I've seen something that was being chased by jets. But like I said, this one seemed like it was doing its own thing. They were sent to check it out. It knew they were coming, and it said, bye-bye. Now, could that be one of our crap? Of course. I don't know what it is. I have zero answers what that thing was. I don't even know the shape. Unidentified. I don't know the shape. It was just a seriously bright light. And I couldn't, from where we were in the dark, I couldn't make out any shape, anything about it, except that it was a super bright light that was bright enough that when it would go over these mountain peaks, it would literally light the trees. So that's what made me think it was like a spotlight looking for something on the ground. But I didn't think of it as beaming light down. It was just so bright that as it got close, you could see the mountains around it. But so I can get to those questions, but not yet, because I didn't know enough at that point.
Right.
But so I start reading that book. And that's the first time I referenced Communion. And I read about missing time. And I read about the grays. Now, the story I told you earlier about driving through the snowstorm, like I said, in my mind, I felt programmed to only think of it as you fell asleep at the wheel, you're lucky to be alive, you crash into a snowbank, drive home. That was it, like pre-programmed thoughts that they're still in there. So I never thought of it. Never thought of it at all. Or the wound on my leg or the penis thing. But now I start reading this book and they talk about scoop marks, just like what I had. And I was like, holy fuck. And I go down there and I feel it. And I still have a hole there to this day. You can literally put your finger in
That's
the hole
crazy.
on my shin where it was gone. And it was still there. I mean, it was much more then. And I was like, holy shit, that's just like the scoop mark. And it never hurt. It didn't bleed. I didn't know where it came from. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God. So I start panicking. So I start thinking a lot about that event, right? So I'm like, oh my God. And then I start really processing that event now through the lens of, could this have been one of those experiences? So I start dissecting that night. I'm like, okay, was I asleep? Was I tired? Could I have fallen asleep at the wheel? And I'm like, well, so now I'm like almost, I don't want to say meditating, but really focusing hard on those memories. And during that period of my life, I was definitely eating a little mushrooms and different things. So I was trying to access those
Right.
memories. I was trying to like unlock. So I would take stuff and I would like just focus on it. Like I was not a meditator. I wasn't doing breathing or anything like that. But I was like, okay, what's the last thing I remember? And I remember feeling gripped, tense, nervous, coming around the corner, literally like doing this, thinking, oh fuck, I'm about to get in a head-on collision.
That's
And
crazy.
I'm like, that doesn't feel like I'm about to fall asleep. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm coming around the corner going, ah. And then the next thing I know, I'm in this snowbank. And I'm like, okay, all right, let's just assume for a second I did kind of fall asleep. Okay. And I don't remember those last few turns, but then I just go into the snowbank. I'm like, so, okay, I crash into this snowbank. That doesn't wake me up when I've just barely kind of fallen asleep. Okay, that doesn't make sense. If I've just fallen asleep and literally crashed my car into a snowbank and like shock awake, I'm going to be awake. I'm going to wake up. Whoa, I just fucking ran it. Oh shit, I fell
You
asleep.
also
You
said it
know what I
was in
mean?
neutral too, right? So that's
Yeah.
pretty weird.
So that's the first thing was, whoa, I would have been awake. But then I'm like, wait a minute. It was in neutral. How could, if I crashed into the thing, I'm in
How did
gear,
it
it's a
shift?
stick shift, it
Yeah.
would have stalled. It would have stalled. Then it would have been covered in snow. I would have froze to death. I'm like, so if I wouldn't have woke up, the car would have stalled. I'd have froze to death. What the fuck? Then I remember the hole in my leg. I'm like, holy shit, the hole in my leg. I'm like, if I cracked my shin on the under dash of the vehicle to put a huge fucking hole in my leg, that would wake me up. So I'm like, oh my God, something happened. Like I did not fall asleep at the wheel. I did not crash into the snowbank. It felt like I was placed there. So that was the thing that freaked me out. So then I started really focusing on that moment of what was the last thing I remember, the last thing I remember. And a couple times when I was, and admittedly, I had a little bit of LSD because I was trying to access that stuff and I was thinking super hard about it. I kept having these visions of like a military roadblock. And I didn't understand it. I'm like, I'm not seeing grays. I'm not seeing the thing that scared me in the book, in the movie. I'm like, what? Why do I feel like I see some sort of military roadblock? And I didn't understand it until years later when I read about my labs. And then I went, holy fucking shit. And then I start thinking about it. Okay, let's just assume, just now, this is speculation 100%, but let's assume for a second, A, my labs are real. B, that maybe there was something happening. Maybe there was a crash retrieval. Maybe something came down. Maybe they shot something down. This is in the exact same parallel of the thing that I see a couple months later. And subsequently, after many years of study, that area is such a hot spot. I know so many other people that have had many experiences along that road in those exact same spots, including my kids years later. So there's something that's going on up there, definitely. And the Taos Pueblo tribe call that area which where this thing appeared, there's like a sacred lake up there. I think it's called Blue Lake. I'm not 100% sure if it's Blue Lake. You can look it up. Sacred Lake, Taos Pueblo, but it's up there, Williams Lake, one of those lakes, and it's a little tiny little, and they all talk about it being a portal, Paul's portal, and things appearing and disappearing there, going all the way back. So whatever, that area was a high value area. So I start thinking, okay, what is, if this, like, this doesn't make sense. Like, what happened to me? Well, if I take the MyLab mindset, what could have happened is I come around the corner. Holy shit, there's some kind of military roadblock. I'm not supposed to be there. The pass has already been closed. So what I found out later was that I had gone in and then they closed both sides of the pass due to the snow. So no one else was coming in. So now you have the road is closed. No one is supposed to be on this road except this fucking idiot who comes around the corner, stumbles into something, and then they're like, uh-oh, grab this kid, shoot me up with something to make me wipe my memory and forget, and then give me hypnotic suggestions. You fell asleep at the wheel. You're lucky to be alive. You crashed into a snowbank. You better just drive home. Don't ever think about this again, kind of thing. Oh, but while we've got you here, let's take a little scoop out of you. Let's take some DNA. Oh, let's take some sperm or something. Let's ram something. Let's do some medical work on him or whatever. And then that is where those injuries came from. Because I had never thought about the fact that I had that weird hole in my leg, and that literally a couple weeks later, I have this massive injury inside my urethra and I can't pee. And they literally thought I had been kicked by a horse. Nothing had happened to me that I could possibly remember.
This is kind of wild because it's a little more rational than jumping straight to NHI. So you were already kind of just doing like, okay, maybe this is a MyLab thing. So
no idea.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like processing this going, holy shit, like what happened to me that night? Was it this or was it this? Because the approved story that was in my head of I just fell asleep, I blah, 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 totally don't buy it at all. That did not happen. It could not have happened. There is absolutely no way I fell asleep at the wheel, fell into that particular snowbank from that situation that night. So whether I got abducted by Grace, whether I got MyLabbed, I don't know what happened. And I've never been one of these people that wants to seek out hypnotic regression. I don't trust it. I don't believe it. I think it's too easy to lead the witness. And to tell you the truth, I've always been freaked out about it. I'm like, I kind of don't want to know, because whatever happened that night, whichever option you choose, wasn't good.
I think that's a good idea to not explore that.
Wasn't good. But that knowledge made me obsess. I have to figure this out now. I got to start digging into this. And that's when I went to the next level in the early 90s and started really looking into this, digging into this. And that was right when the Bob Lazar story came out, right about that same time. And I'm like, holy shit. And so I remember, getting bootlegged VCR tapes of those original stories that Knapp did. The original one that came out.
The Lear
and then
stories.
He did the whole, yes, because he did the original one that came out where Bob was still in the shadows and whatever. And then he went out and did like an investigation where he did like a 6 or 8 part series that he aired on that thing. Well, those things were like bootleg gold in the UFO community. Like everyone wanted copies of those because they weren't like, you couldn't just buy them or sell them. And it's not like they were airing, they aired in Vegas. They weren't airing in New Mexico. But I was finding out about them, at these UFO groups and things that I would, and these little events that I would go to. And I was really paranoid. Okay. So at this point, now I'm in my 20s. I've looked into this enough to know, oh, wow, a lot of researchers have disappeared mysteriously, suicided, this, that, whatever. This is a very, very scary subject. And I was like, okay,
Were you
I
comfortable talking to people outside of the community about this,
knew,
or was this
not
something
even
you kind
people
of
in the
kept
community.
down? Okay.
No, very, very few people that I would talk to. My friend
So the
Jeff.
stigma was that bad then, back
Oh
then.
yes, dude.
Wow.
Bro, let me tell you, I was a wild person in my 20s. Anyone who like Strader was like a bright shining um wild animal. And the but I was taken seriously because I was intelligent and smart, and I didn't make up a bunch of bullshit. You know what I mean? So the last thing I could do, and my brother and I had this conversation not too long ago. He's like, dude, how come you never told me? I'm like, you never would have believed me. You would have fucking walked around telling everyone, John's crazy. He thinks that UFOs abducted him and aliens and blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, there's just no way. I couldn't, when I would try to talk to my mother about it, very Christian-y, she would immediately freak out. I was like, I was already doing the whole like ancient aliens thing before I had read anything about that. I was just like processing, like, oh my God, everything makes sense. Because if I was a goat herder 2,000 years ago, seeing the shit I saw, I would make up angels, God, whatever. So I was already on that tack of this shit goes all the way back. Like we're living in a fake reality. Like, how do you tell people that, Paul? So no, I couldn't tell anyone. And
Fair.
in the mid 90s, and I'll stop so if you have any questions, but like in the mid 90s is when I got married to my now ex-wife. And I think I didn't tell her about any of this until we were already together for maybe a year and a half, where I finally was like, okay, I think I can trust her enough that I can tell her these stories, tell her what happened, tell her what I think, without her immediately just freaking out and disappearing and thinking I'm crazy. So I started bringing it up
Right.
to her, and of course, exactly like I thought, she's just like, what UFOs, aliens, missing time? Like, it does not compute. And she's looking at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck.
Your
And
heart sank.
yeah. And she's like, why are you making up this story to like pump yourself up so that I'll think you're cool? I'm like, you don't think I'm cool. You think I'm fucking crazy. I'm like, why would I make up a story and tell you that is guaranteed to make you think I'm fucking crazy? Like, so I was
Why would
just
you self-sabotage, right?
right. I'm like,
Basically. Yeah.
oh, so I'm just like, so now whenever we're together, we're on road trips, I'm scanning the skies. I'm like, because I've seen things at this
Yeah.
point. So I'm like, because I've had other experiences since then that I've seen shit that I'm like, oh, that could have been. So now I'm looking all the time, right? And so we're driving to Taos to visit her family. And we're in a place called Powake, which is just before you get to Espanola, which is the turnoff to go up towards Los Alamos. Everyone knows Los Alamos Labs. And sure as shit, a giant, shiny white orb about the size of a small plane, not a tiny thing. And this was probably 93 or 94. I don't know exactly what year it was, probably 94. Um, and
Was it
this thing is just,
metallic or was it like a
yes,
light?
no, clear as day, bright white metallic object, no propulsion, no lifting fins,
Something like that?
but white, pure
Okay.
white. And
Gotcha.
it is hauling ass across the sky in a straight line. So my first thought was, oh shit, is it a balloon? But if so, wow, there's like some 200-mile-an-hour winds up there. Like, what's going on? But I'm like, as soon
Right.
as I see it, I tell her, oh my God, what's that? What's that? Keep your eye on that. Because I'm driving. And anyone who drives down that road, Powake, knows that it's a hairy road. Everyone's hauling ass. There's cops all over. You're trying not to speed. It's kind of a speed trap. It's kind of curvy and windy, and you're in, you got the like cement barriers here. So there's nowhere I can like pull over, or, I'm like dodging vehicles and 18 wheelers. So I'm like gripping the steering wheel, looking at this thing, going, look at the road, look at the thing, look at the road, look at the thing, look at the road, look at the thing. But I'm telling her, just keep an eye on it, keep an eye on it. And so as it's going across the windscreen, just hauling ass, all of a sudden I look up, it's gone. Bye-bye. And she's like, and I'm like, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? And I'm like, holy shit, holy shit. And she's like, it just took off. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I'm not sure. It just went. Whew. I mean, it just disappeared so fast. She said it took off. It didn't just fade out. It went pew. And so what? And it was
Wow.
coming directly. I mean, directly from Los Alamos. It was coming. I mean, that's probably 15 miles straight across to Los Alamos Labs. So it was. I mean, it was coming directly from there, going straight across. Disappears. So I'm like, aha! You saw that? Oh my god! Da 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 da. And but it wasn't enough for her. She's like, well, it could have been a balloon. Well, and I'm like, well, you saw it accelerate. She goes, well, it could have just popped. And maybe that's what I saw, and it just disappeared. And this, and that. So she's rationalizing, which I get. And I'm like, yeah, well, and she goes, well, how do you know that's alien? I'm like, I don't know it's alien. What I'm saying is, I don't know what it was. What do you think it was? Like, you saw it. It was weird. Doesn't make sense. It wasn't that windy. It was going straight across the sky. It was not going up. It could have been a balloon, but what was it? We don't know. So that was as close as we got until the next incident. So I'm going to pause there, take a drink,
Yes.
let you let me know anything
Perfect.
you want to hear from that.
No, perfect. And I love it. So I saw this earlier. I think I've heard this story. Somebody had commented, can you tell the story about the camp? Hold on. Let me find that.
Yes, I will tell that.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly.
You know what I'm talking about.
That's why you had the white lady. That's why you had the white lady.
Right there.
Well, I can't tell that story. Like I said, I'm telling you everything.
Yeah, no,
in the order I discovered it. Okay, so even though that happened when I was almost 10 years old, 9 turning 10, I didn't process that as something anomalous and other events until this next thing, which I'll get to here in a second. So anything else you want me to clarify or bring up or any other things?
Yes, I did. Okay.
So
how long after the whole scoop in the leg incident was that, whenever you saw the orb in the sky with her? How long after that? Like years, months?
Years. Okay, yeah, that was probably 94-ish. When I read the book, it was around 88, 89, right around there. It was still in the 80s when I read the book and sort of made all those things. I didn't learn about my labs till way later. At that point, I just assumed it was a gray abduction. That's kind of what I was thinking.
So you did kind of land on aliens initially, and then you flip-flopped.
Well, because once I realized none of the story in my head made sense, and everything kind of matched the communion book. I was like, oh my God, that's why I freaked out when I saw the gray cover. That's why I was a little freaked out by them in general. Just crazy stuff. Oh, Mandy, stop it.
she's trying to distract you, John.
Yes, she wants me to talk about AKA. I'll never release any photo of him, so you can tell him to just settle down. I do what I say, and I'm an honorable man. So
hi, yes, AKA. Hope you're enjoying.
I know you're probably listening, AKA. And I do have your picture, and I will never post it, so don't worry. I'm just sad that you disappeared out of my life. So there you go.
Christian says hello, by the way.
I see Christian in there. Hi, Christian. I wish you were here. I'd love to have you up here and talk with you also. So yeah, we'll just keep rolling. But okay, so yeah, is there anything else from those first? So it was a few years after, like I said, until it was, I don't know, mid-90s. I don't remember exactly when I first learned about my labs, and then I was like, holy shit. But at that point, yes, I had assumed I had some sort of missing time event with some kind of aliens at that. And that's why telling my wife or anybody else, that's a hard sell, especially in, mid-90s. I was like, how do I tell? Because I really don't know. I didn't have any memories of I'm looking at a gray or, you know what I mean? Like zero memories. Like I always used to kind of make the joke with my friends. I'm like, well, whatever they do to wipe your memories, boy, it worked on me. I have no
John,
residual.
What is this comment pertaining to? It says John almost.
That's the next story. That's the next story.
So I don't know who that is.
I don't either.
Kaz, but they know your story. So
I guess so. Cool. Well, I mean, a few of these have been out there. So, but yeah. So okay. So then we'll fast forward to the one that everyone's wanting me to kind of get to, because this is a big one, the biggest, really. This is where everything really happened. So I was in a sport called snow shovel racing. Look it up. I have a whole page dedicated to my shovel racing history. All of my life is on there. You can literally see John evolve from like the 80s all the way to, well, I think my things go to like 2003, but I've got stuff going into the mid 20 teens. But basically, it's a sport from Angel Fire where we would ride these snow shovels down ski slopes going very, very fast. And I was one of the best who did it. And then the X Games, the Winter Extreme
John,
Games.
were you the shovel meister?
Yes, yes. Am.
Okay.
Am, not was. I am
Okay, I
the
think I see
Shovelmeister.
something here. I think
Yeah,
I see
yeah. Oh,
something
yeah.
here.
Oh, yeah.
Let
There's
me
a
see.
whole
Pull it up.
Shovelmeister page. Oh, yes.
Okay.
This is part of the story. So it's weirdly enough, it is part of the story. Oh, wow.
Is
What the
that
fuck
it?
is that? Well, no, that's not me, but they're using my name, those fuckers. So these people are stealing
Really?
my thing.
It says
So,
how dangerous is it,
oh,
John?
this
You
is an
see?
interview with me. Oh, wow. I didn't even
Yeah.
see. So it's an interview somebody did with me. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty cool. Is that
I
you?
hadn't even seen this. Yeah, that's me. That's me.
Nice. Nice,
Wow.
John.
But the
That's
other
awesome.
ones are not me. The other ones are not me. But yes, so the Shovelmeister, that was a name I got in the early 90s. We used to get really drunk at the shovel races after the event. And that was my college days, and we were drinking Jägermeister. And I'll never forget, I was drinking a ton of Jaeger and I was waxing my snow shovels. And one of my friends just looks at me and goes, "Dude, you're like the Shovelmeister." And it just sort of stuck. And so that became, first, it was just my team name. I was Team Shovelmeister, all of me and my friends going to the X Games. I was not the Shovelmeister. I was a member of Team Shovelmeister. But after the event, the team broke up, and then I was just the Shovelmeister. But so ESPN decides they're going to do a thing called the Winter X Games. They had had the regular X Games, I think, for 2 years. And so they're like, let's do a version in winter sports. And the X Games, I mean, ESPN had been out to shovel races. So they had seen the sport and they knew who I was and who other people were. So they decided they're going to put on the shovel races as part of their event, but not the shovel race where you're just a dude riding a shovel. That's the classic. That's called production racing, which is just a person and a snow shovel, a grain scoop shovel going down the mountain. I hold the world record at 73 miles an hour. But then there's a thing called the modified shovel, or ESPN called it the super modified shovel, which is basically a kind of a cross between a soapbox derby and a bobsled for snow. And if you go to John Strader, the Shovelmeister YouTube page, you'll see that stuff. That's something you could actually pull up and you'll see what a modified shovel looks like. But it's basically like a gravity powered NASCAR sled for snow with a shovel underneath. So the X Games was like, we're into this. Let's do this. So they call me up and they say, look, Strader, we want you to bring 4 sleds. And I was like, dude, I have barely 2. One of them I don't even trust. I have to rebuild the whole thing. That's me, but that's not a modified. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll put together four sleds. And so all of this is on my YouTube page, The Shovelmeister, where it's like, because MTV sent me a camera. So that's the story where the person said, tell me about the camera. So MTV was not allowed in those days to go to the ESPN's new, they were keeping, it wasn't like wide open to the press. They did not want anyone else, any other press people up there filming their event. So MTV, who had also filmed me on MTV Sports, was like, well, let's just send Strader a camera and then he can kind of film his leading up to it, building the sleds. He'll do like a documentary for us and then sneak the camera behind the scenes at the X Games and film the whole thing, which I did. So the week leading up to the X Games, I am busy. I am putting together, we're building sleds at the last minute. I'm trying to get sponsors together. I mean, it's very expensive. I've got the whole town of Taos behind me, Angel Fire. I mean, I'm working my ass off. I'm driving over the mountain pass every day to build these sleds and do all this stuff. But I've got this camera, so I'm filming everything I do. So there was another team that was from Taos, the Canyon Racer. I forget what they called their team. And they were also building one sled for the race. And so I was like, well, this would be a good time. I should go over and interview those guys, do an interview with them, sort of pre-race, see kind of what their sled looks like, do a little spying and see what their sled looks like and talk to them. Well, they were pretty nervous about it. They did not want me to get any secrets from them because they thought like, you're going to steal our secrets for your sleds. I was like, no, 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 this is for MTV. You know, that would get me in the door. I'm like, look, the camera says MTV Sports on it. Like, come on. And so they're like, okay, well, you can do this interview. So my ex-wife and I would go and we do this interview with these guys. And I'm just sitting there, and it's literally, this is one of those moments where over the years, there's a few times in my life where I'm like, oh, if I would have just zigged instead of zagged, who knows what could have happened. But I'm sitting there filming this, and all I'm thinking is, God, these guys are so boring because they do not want to answer anything. Everything's like a very short yes, no answers. They just didn't really want to talk to me, and they were nervous. So the interviews just sucks. And I'm sitting there doing this interview, and then the camera dies. And I'm like, oh, shit. All right, well, I guess that's it. We're done, guys. Battery's dead. Got to go. So now we're driving back to our place in El Prado, which is just northwest of like the main center of Taos, right on the edge of the Taos Pueblo. And anyone who knows Taos knows you have this big, beautiful mountain right here, Taos Mountain. And then as you look to the west, it's like a flat plain with some mountains far away. And that's where the gorge, the Taos Gorge is. It's just beautiful. It's epic. And it's that time of night where, like in the west, there's still light in the sky, right? So there's that sort of light blue, dark kind of haze. So you can still see the outline of the mountains and stuff. But above us, stars, it's dark. So I'm driving home with my ex, and we're just talking, blah, 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 do. And she was, you know, I think she was probably commenting on how boring those guys were. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to use any of that, but okay, whatever. We're driving home. And all of a sudden, this super bright light comes around the mountain. And when I mean around the mountain, that means it wasn't higher than the mountain. It was coming around the mountain. And that from the valley floor to the top of Taos Mountain, it's probably 5,000-6,000 feet.
What time of day was this?
Just at dusk. So it's January, late January. So that's probably 5:30, 5:45-ish. That's my guess. I don't know exactly, but the time of night, like it gets very dark. Well, it's probably a little, so it could be 6, maybe 6 o'clock. But it's like I said, there's just enough light in the western sky that it's not completely dark. So I can see the outline of the mountain. That's why I know. So this thing comes around the mountain, and all I see is a light. I cannot see anything but a super bright light, almost like it's just shining forward, like it's a spotlight. And it's instantly like recognizable, like, what is that? And I remember exactly going, oh my God, what is that? Because nothing flies over there. The airport's over here on the other side. No one would be flying that close to the mountain. And instantly I'm trying to think, like, what the hell could it be? Well, the only thing I can assume at that point was, well, and if you go around that mountain, you get to a place called Arroyo Seco, and then the mountain, you drive up to the Taos Ski Valley. So anyone who knows that area will know exactly what I'm talking about. And so I was thinking, oh, well, maybe there was a crash, a car coming down from the ski valley, and there was a really bad crash. Maybe that's a life flight helicopter, picked up some bodies of humans, and they're taking them to the hospital. That's the only thing I can think. The only thing that would be flying right there. Nothing else would be flying there. Nothing has ever flown right there. So that's what I'm thinking. Whoa, I wonder what it is. Keep an eye on it. So we're same thing. I'm driving and I'm looking at it. I'm driving, I'm looking at it. She's looking at it. And we get right to my driveway, which is right off the main drag. So we pull off the driveway and I jump out of the car. I grab that camera because my first thing is I'm filming it. I grab the camera, I turn it on, I point it just as this thing is starting to come across us, our heads. And all I hear is it go, it just makes a grinding sound. And that was it. I'm like, look,
Wow.
and I just throw it down. So it's not one of those, the battery died, it was full because of the UFO. It was already dead, but it had enough juice to just turn the wheel like maybe half a turn. Okay. But I don't think about it. I just throw the thing and then I'm looking up. My wife and I are both standing outside looking straight up, and this thing goes over our head. And I'm telling you, never seen anything like it before or since. It just blocked out the sky. It was jet black,
this?
huge, 300 to 400 yards across. Literally, it was maybe 1,500, 2,000 feet above us, and it blocked out the sky. I'm looking up, I can't see the stars. I mean, it has blocked out the sky. And underneath it, 7 lights, 1 in the middle and 3 going like this. Okay. So it's like kind of boomerangs. Now, here's the discrepancy. Me, I'm just like this. I'm just in shock and in awe as this thing's going over my head. I'm just watching it like, holy shit. And I'm staring at the lights underneath it. And they're kind of warping, right? They're kind of going, whoa. And I see like a rainbow, kind of a halo around them. So I'm just like, I don't want to say mesmerized, but mesmerized by the fucking lights. I'm like, whoa. But my wife is like trying to see the outline, trying to see exactly how far it goes, what is its shape. So she's like really looking to figure out what the hell is this thing. So when I remembered back, it was always like, well, it was a giant triangle. But she was like, no, no, no. It was much more like a V or boomerang shape because there was nothing in the middle. But I was so busy looking at the lights and just sort of staring at it. I wasn't really processing I was just dumbfounded. I was literally dumbfounded. She was actually kept her head better than me. So I'm like, oh, and the thing goes right over our fucking head. Doesn't make a sound, not one sound. And it's just goes right over our house and heads towards the Taos Pueblo. So it's just going straight towards the Pueblo. And I'm like, holy shit. And we're watching it. And it's not going fast, Paul. It is not hauling ass by any means. Maybe 150 miles an hour. I don't know. It was not doing what I would consider UFO speed. You know what I mean? It wasn't doing like the 5 observable speed, but yeah, except 3 lights on each side. So it was 7 lights. Now, the other thing is, this is January, around 27th of 1997. This is 5 weeks before the Phoenix lights. Okay. So we see this giant fucking thing. And I'm like, holy shit. And I'm blown away. And it goes over our heads, starts heading towards the Pueblo. And then right then, I see 2 more lights coming around the mountain, 2 more Air Force jets. Now they are hauling ass. They're going way faster than this thing. So they come flying around the corner, around the mountain. We can hear them. And they come flying up. Now they are closing on this thing. It is not trying to get away. It doesn't just go, pew, take off. It doesn't do anything like that. So like earlier, Mendy said something about like, could it, the other thing, could it be escorting? This could have been an escort. I don't know. But it was going straight towards the mountains, almost in the exact spot where I had seen the original UFO in 85. It's heading directly to that spot where the mountains are, where Wheeler Peak is, and it's heading right in that direction. But now I'm way on the other side of all these mountains. I'm in a completely different spot now looking, but it's heading in that direction. These jets are closing up behind it. And then let's see if I can get my hands in here. So they're coming up behind it, and then they just peel off, because if they would have kept going, they would have gone over it, right? They would have literally passed it over the top. And it didn't look like they wanted to do that.
Something similar like this. This is an actual picture of the Phoenix lights, actually.
And there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, look at that. That's 7. That's 6 lights. So I don't know. Mine had 7. I'm pretty sure it was 7 because there was 1 in the middle. I'm pretty sure it had 3 going down. I don't know. But actually, I do have the screenshot. So this thing goes over my head. The jets come in. They peel off. They go over the mountain this side towards the south, and it goes over the mountain over past the Pueblo, and they all disappear and they're gone. And I just instantly turn to my ex-wife, and I'm just like, I just freak out, because for me at this point, I'm not even processing what I had just saw, Paul. I'm kind of like, I'm still just, all that I care about personally is you just saw that with me. You saw that shit.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy. Ha ha. You know what I mean? I mean, literally, that I think I was like, ah, you fucking saw that. Like, I'm not nuts. You saw the Air Force was chasing it. And what the hell was that?
Yeah.
And that was a UFO, blah, blah, blah. I'm like blowing up, right? So she's freaked out. We're both freaked out. Not Weaver Peak, Wheeler. And so we're freaked out, right? So we're like, I mean, we go inside, we're like, oh my God, blah, 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 you know, but she's like freaked. She doesn't want to talk about it. And I'm like, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm like, oh my God. But I
Adrenaline.
have,
Yeah.
yeah, but I also have all this. I can't like think about this because I have to get ready for this huge event. The biggest moment of my life is less than a week away. And I'm like, I can't even, I have to just put this out of my mind and finish doing what I'm doing. So I just finish the X Games. I do all my stuff. We go to the X Games. Anyone who's curious, they can literally watch all of this. It's all on there. I go to the X Games. My team wins, but I have the worst crash in X Games history. I get horribly injured. It's all on my page. Red Panda still likes to pull it up and play it sometimes when I'm in spaces. He thinks it embarrasses me. Trust me, I've lived with it since '97. I still have the back pain to, you know. But so I get in this horrible wreck, and they called it the new agony of defeat. Which anyone who knows the old wide world of sports, there was a guy who wrecked doing ski jumping, and he just eats shit and goes flying over the thing, and they're like, ah, the agony of defeat. So they were calling me the new agony of defeat. Everybody, I mean, we were live on ESPN. I don't know, 28, 30 million people were watching me eat shit in front of the whole country, in front of the world.
Wow.
And I ate shit, like seriously crashed. So I get in this horrible wreck. I get a massive concussion. I break this bone right here, maxillofacial bone, crack all these teeth. These are all fake. Pop my eyeball, get a massive concussion, bruise my heart, crack my sternum, break 3 ribs and 3 bones in my back. So I have like massive chest cavity injuries. My head is literally, I had a motorcycle helmet on it that thing was just cracked. So I get fucked up, right? So I'm like, and spend a few days in the hospital there, come back, spend some time in Albuquerque convalescing, and then I move back up to Taos. And I mean, I am jacked. So I have to have a hospital bed in my house, where in my living room, because we couldn't fit it in my bedroom. So I'm basically staying in the living room close to the bathroom as I'm like rehabbing, and I'm all fucked up, right? And so a couple weeks go by, and boom, the Phoenix Lights happens. And I freak out because I'm like,
Yeah.
holy shit, that's
Confirmation.
exactly what we saw.
Yep.
Holy shit. And I'm like, everyone's acting like this is a first time event. And all I'm thinking is, whatever that is, it was flying around the Southwest for weeks. So I'm like, holy shit. So now it's got my wife into it, my friend. We're all sitting there talking, and we're like processing all this stuff, right? And I'm like, holy shit. Like something is happening. Like it's happening. Like they're coming out. Like they're just flying around these giant ships. Like, holy shit. Like, and '97, just for anyone who really knows UFO history, a huge year. I can't even, that's a whole nother, we could do a whole show just on 1997, Paul. And I'm telling you, you will have, it'll be a 3-hour show. So much happened that
I
year.
believe it.
So much. And I mean, just an example, like that's when Alien Interview came out. That's when Greer and Mitchell went and talked to Admiral Wilson. That's when Admiral Wilson started going and knocking on doors. All that shit was happening in '97 because Phoenix Lights blew everyone away. They were like, holy shit. But I promise you, they knew all about whatever that was well before Phoenix, because I saw 2 jets chasing it in January. And then there's stories from the Phoenix, or the whole, it's not Phoenix, it's all of Arizona and parts of Utah
Right.
event. And there was jets chasing it then too. So whatever it was closely being monitored by our people. And it was, you know, it was happening over a period of time. So as we're doing this and we're talking about all this stuff, I'm sitting there, and my wife's in the room, my friend Jeff is in the room, and and I'm sitting there, and all I'm doing is like, I'm wanting to understand, Paul. And I've never kind of cried out to the universe. I'm not a religious person. I don't pray. I don't do that. But I asked the universe for an answer, right? I was like, I have to understand this, because I knew I was tied to it in some way. And I'm like, I need to know what's happening. I need to know what's going on. And then that's when I got the download. And it was like, you know, I can't explain it. It's like a lightning bolt from the blue, Paul. I went from here I am
Right.
questioning everything. I don't understand anything. What is going on here? To like, bam, just all of a sudden, this data just in my brain, and it
Yeah.
was overloading me. And I was literally like, and my wife and friend were looking at me like, what the fuck's wrong with you? And I'm like, now at this point, I'd never heard the term download. I didn't know that it was even a thing. I didn't know anything about Akashic records or any kind of channeling. None of that. I never studied the woo. I was only looking at nuts and bolts because I was like, Air Force is chasing craft and there's possibly being like that was my wheelhouse. Everything else, the crystals and all I was like, I'm not into the new age stuff. I'm like, not for me. What's the aerospace companies? Where's the shit hidden? Tell me about Roswell. The history, that's where I was at, right? So all of a sudden I get this download. And at that point, the only word I could use was epiphany. I'm like, oh my God, I just had this epiphany. Like all of a sudden I felt like, wow, I know what it is. I understand it all. I know how it all
Yeah.
fits together. And so I start like babbling like a fucking idiot, like trying to explain this to them. And they're looking at me like, what the fuck? I'm like, look, and I had this knowledge all of a sudden, and I was scared to death that if I didn't say it out loud, if I didn't just regurgitate as best I could, that I was going to lose it. I was like, I
Right.
have this knowledge. And I instantly, it was like, that was part, it still is to this day. It feels like it's part of it is I have to share it. I got to share this knowledge. What it is, I don't know. I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it's real. I have no idea. But all of a sudden I had this epiphany. I had this information that made sense to me. That's all I can say is it made sense to me. And this was 97. And so I just said, look, you guys, and the last thing anybody, and you all on Twitter and YouTube know this about me, like I can talk. And we had been sitting there having this conversation all night. And so all of a sudden I'm like, look, guys, I have to get this out of me. I have to tell you this story. I just had this epiphany, but like you have to just let me say it. It's complicated. It's long. And they're looking at me like, what? I'm like, please, just please. I'm begging them, like, please just let me tell you this idea, this thing, this whatever. So I sit there and I just start just spitting it out. And it takes minimum couple hours. To their credit, they sat there and listened to me and they're like, whoa, that's freaky. Like that's crazy. That's freaky. But I had to get it out of me, right? So I
Well,
tell this whole
John,
story to them. Go ahead.
real quick. So at this point, let me see if I'm maybe getting this right. You've had a couple of experiences. You've been researching, and all these dots are connecting. You almost had like a synchronicity / epiphany, and then that's kind of like where like the knowledge vomit starts happening, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because I had done enough. I had looked into religions. I had looked into this. I had all this stuff that I had all these pieces. And so, I don't want to claim it came from aliens. I don't know where it came from, but somehow I put all this shit together. But it was like, that's the thing, Paul. I wasn't sitting there going, I should come up with a theory on what all this is or where it all comes from or what it means. It's the last thing that I was going to do. You know what I mean? Like it just appeared. I mean, it was, and I'm telling
The
you,
light turned on. Yeah.
it's like 65 million years of data. And it's not, it's timelines, it's historical figures, it's events in history, it's alien races, where they come from, it's AI. Huge part of it is the AI. It's all of these things that we now talk about all of the time. And so at that point, I was like, this is just some crazy thing that I came up with. Like, this doesn't even, like, it's amazing, but who's going to believe anything like this? And it wasn't until, there you go. It wasn't until I started getting back into the topic and like getting little bits from other people's stories and this and that and hearing that I was like, holy shit, that's just like, oh my God, that fits in. That makes sense. Huh. And that's when I started going like, well, what really is this? Where did it really come from? I'm not the only one on this path. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. And I think that was Craft Beard there saying acquired savant syndrome. We talked about that, and because I told him all this whole story, just him and me one time, and he was saying that sometimes when people have a head injury, all of a sudden they will get some kind of, savant syndrome where the injury somehow unlocks something in your brain where you can all of a sudden you could read music or speak 20 languages
Yeah.
or any sorts of, and it's a viable theory. I do not have a theory. I'm not one of these experiencers who's going to tell you I understand it all. I have my own theory which can explain a lot, but I don't take it as gospel. I don't know. I don't trust the sources, even if the source is my
Right.
concussed brain. I don't know. I've never been able to trust that whatever I've seen or experienced, I can't interpret it any other way. That's why I feel like even though I'm a believer in the phenomena and I have a very wide set of beliefs, I don't try to preach them to people because I feel like, how could you trust it? Even if these things are real, even if they are here talking to us, they obviously have some sort of clandestine plan or like they're not showing themselves. So they don't seem trustworthy to me. So my own experiences, I can't interpret them as fact. I don't know. I tell you what I know. I
It's
tell you
very
what I saw.
level-headed.
I tell you what I experienced. Well, because unlike a lot of people who are seeing stuff now, and it's the first time and they get so excited and they just immediately jump to 1,000 conclusions
It's
because,
alien. It's alien. Yeah.
well,
Like right away.
but
Yeah.
but I've had 40 years to figure this out. You know what I mean? Like I've been thinking about it for a very long time. If you would have talked to me in 92, I would have been very much like that. Oh my God, it's aliens. I was abducted by grays. I know that I was experimented on. Like, you know what I mean? That's what I thought it was because it was the only thing in the literature that seemed to fit my story. It was the only thing that kind of fit. And it wasn't until I learned about my labs, I'm like, oh, that fits too. That's even, and I was like, either or sucks. Because I used to have friends that tell me, dude, I know
I,
this really
I
good
think
hypnotist. You should do regression. And I'm like, look, I read about people who have regressions and they have these horrific memories of like procedures and terror and all this kind of stuff. I go, I've had a lot of surgeries in my life. And guess what? You don't remember being sliced open and having them take out your parts and do shit and whatever, because that's traumatic. And I always felt like that's why they wipe your memory and make sure you don't remember any of that stuff, because who who wants to sit there and have an image of their body flayed open or God knows what? Like, you know what I'm saying? And so I was always like, whatever happened, I don't want to know. Like, I don't want to all of a sudden have these visions of
right.
what had, you know what I mean? I was like, that does not sound good to me. And anyone who had that, it always fucked up their life. So I'm like, I'd rather just not go there with that because I just don't,
Well, what I
like,
think what I think, like in your case, and I love your grounded approach on this, is it's like the spectrum of phenomenology is like I think a good way of looking at it, because regardless if it's NHI, that whole spectrum of phenomenology is still very interesting. Like what is happening there, right? Like that download, or if it's a MyLab incident, right, that you had. And then I know you have some other paranormal stuff. Maybe we can slide it our way into that
well, we're
next.
just getting
But
to that. That's the next part. Yeah.
okay, yeah, let's get into it. Yeah.
Well, so this is one of those. Okay. So I have a list of what I would consider paranormal events that happened through little young childhood all the way up until this first real legit UFO that I saw, right? Now, I was just a kid, so I didn't know what to make of any of these things. And a lot of them, I never got confirmation on most of them until I spoke to my mother not too long ago. We finally got to a point where she can hear about this and not immediately freak out, and because she's Jesus all the way Jesus. So me talking about this is like, no, we can't talk about that. So she's finally open to talking. And so I was like, Mom, I have all these memories that I don't know if they're real or not. So I want to tell you, here's what I remember. I want to see if you can recall them. And so there was quite a few that, like, I'll just give you an example before I get into that. Here's a perfect example. So all the years I was a kid and through my teen years and whatever, because I consider myself a child of Apollo. because I was born in 67 and we went to the moon in 69. So as I was a toddler and getting older, we were landing on the moon, right? So I was always obsessed with astronauts and planes and anything space oriented and all that stuff. But I had these weird memories. I was like, I remember being with the astronauts. I remember going to the moon with the astronauts. How is this possible? This doesn't make any fucking sense. And I used to tell people when I was growing up, like, oh, yeah, I went to the moon with the astronauts. And they look at you like, what the fuck, kid? And so I had to stop telling that story. I'm like, and so then I was, once again, you're thinking, I'm like, oh, I must have just, I have a memory of watching it on TV and I was a kid. So I think, oh, I went to the moon, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm doing this quiz with my mom one night. And I'm like, okay, mom, this is going to sound crazy, but I have this memory and I've always felt like I went to the moon with the astronauts. Does that make any sense to you? Did we have parties where we watched the moon landings? Like, was I crawling around in front of the TV? Like, what was happening? She's like, oh, no. Yes, we did. We did have parties. And then she starts naming Apollo astronauts who were there. I'm like, wait, what? What are you talking about? And now, I'm not going to name the family name because I just don't want to do it right now. But I come from an aerospace family who was very, very involved in the Apollo program and the missions pre-Apollo. And those of you who are already in here already know who it is. But I'm just not going to name them because I already don't want to get in trouble with my family. But
No
they were
worries.
very close with the astronauts. And so my mother's first husband, they were all part of this thing, right? And then my mom got divorced, married my dad. So I have step siblings who are in this family or half siblings, but I'm not officially part of the family. But we were all still sort of interchanged, right? And so my mom, when she married my dad, he was kind of like a C-list celebrity in Hollywood in those days. He was a singer. His name is John Gary. You could look him up, Paul. Put a little something up there. If you type in John Gary singer, it'll pop up right away. That's my dad. And he had a TV show in the 60s with like Carol Burnett and Liberace. And I mean, he was hanging around with like all the legends. I mean, he was hanging around with the Rat Pack. He was never a part of the exclusive. He was like the low level guy, but he was around all those people. And so we lived in, in the Hollywood Hills there, in Brentwood, very swanky area. And my dad was hanging out with all these movie stars, but my mom was still friends with the Apollo astronauts' wives. And so they were so big. They were stars too, but they liked to hang out with the stars. So we had certain Apollo astronauts who were very close to my family who would come out and visit and hang out in Hollywood with my dad, and they would take them around and, they're all hobnobbing with the stars, right? But twice during those last Apollo missions, we had these viewing parties where we had actual, there he is. That's the guy. So we had
Handsome.
actual, thank you. Yes, he was much shorter than me. But yes, their whole story, the John Gary story. But yes, but they would come out and hang out, and we would have these Apollo viewing stories where we had actual Apollo astronauts hanging out in the house, watching their friends land on the moon. And she was like, oh, yeah, you were on this person's lap and you were doing this and you were that. And I was like, so I was actually watching the moon landings with Apollo astronauts when I was like 4 and 5 years old. She's like, yep. And I'm like, oh, my God. So that's how growing up, I was like, I went to the moon with the Apollo astronauts because they're right there. My mom was like, oh,
Right.
they're telling us everything that they're doing and they're explaining everything. And she was hanging out with the Apollo astronauts. So yes, I can, Mandy. I don't have as many octaves as him, but I can. It's true. My daughter also. We're the only ones in the family that got the voice, and
That's
that's
awesome.
a whole nother story. My mom was tried her whole life to make me John Gary Jr., but I didn't want that. So okay, so now we'll get back. So that was one of the many like things I went back, and some of them are alien related. This was not. Um, but okay, so after the 97 flyover incident, right? And then the Phoenix Lights happens. This is now a topic with my ex and I. And I'm like, talk, 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 talk. I want to talk about it all the time. I've had this download now. I'm like, oh my God, I know what's going on. Let's discuss. And so we go and we're visiting her parents, and they live up in Taos. And we're telling them the story of this sighting that we've seen, and telling them the story. And then her dad goes, this reminds me. And he goes, in this canyon, and someone said earlier it's the same canyon. It's next door. This is the canyon that goes to Mora. So the one that I was in when I had my incident was Palo Flechado, Highway 64. That goes from Taos to Angel Fire. But south of Taos, there's a road that goes over to Mora and goes to Pajarito. I think it's Pajarito. Scary. Okay. And that's on the way there. And he goes, well, I remember in the mid 70s, there was a UFO sighted there at that camp. And he just said that camp. There was a UFO there, and then the police chased it, and they were chasing it, and it was all in the paper and whatever. And the police officer came out and said, yeah, I was chasing this thing down this pass and saw this UFO. And as soon as he says that, all the hair on the back of my neck, I feel like someone walked over my grave. Now, I hadn't thought about this event. Sipapu, that's it. Exactly. Thank you, Mage. Sipapu. And it's right close to there. Right now, there's a place, it's called, it's some sort of Zen Buddhist retreat, but in those days, it was called Camp Summer Life. And you can find it on Facebook. There's pictures. And it's crazy because I told this story the last year, I looked it up and found actual pictures of this camp that describe it exactly how I remember. So Camp Summer Life. So he remembers this UFO sighting in the 70s. And I was like, when was that, Harv? And he's like, well, I think it was I don't know, it was 77, 70, whatever. And I just freaked out because I remember telling my wife this story, but as a ghost story, because that's the only way I could process what I saw. And so he's telling me the story, and it was right outside that camp the same year, the summer that I was there. And they didn't even know I had gone to that camp. I mean, it was that was when I was a kid. And all of a sudden I just freak out. And I'm like, holy, and they're like, what? And I'm like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden it just snapped. I'm like, what I saw was connected to the UFOs. I was just sure of it. At that point, I was just, wow, this is connected. And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, I'm going to tell you this story. So the story is I'm at this camp. Now, it's a regular old summer camp. We're shooting guns, we're shooting arrows, we're doing
by the way, John?
Yeah.
How old were you, by the way? What year was this?
77. Okay, so my birthday was later at the end of the summer. I'm a Virgo. And this was late July-ish, right around there. I don't know exactly. Somewhere I have the little Camp Summer Life books from 77, 78. And it would probably tell which, because you go in 1 week segments, and I don't remember exactly what week, but it was in July. And sing us a song, John. Thank you. Another time. So one of the things growing up in New Mexico, a very Hispanic culture, one of the classic sort of ghost stories you hear is the story of La Llorona. Now, they made a cheesy movie about it not too long ago, horror movie or whatever. Most people have never heard of La Llorona, but in New Mexico,
here too.
Yeah, if you're in a Hispanic culture, you've heard of La Llorona, and they would call her the ditch witch because the whole point was to try to keep you from going into the dry arroyos and ditches where there'd be a flash flood and keep you. Wow, Mindy. Wow. Well, let's just say I've already done that, but it didn't matter. He didn't care. Okay, so I'll keep going. La Llorona, my little sister. Sorry, I keep reading these comments. I should ignore it. I should.
That's a good comment.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. So I'm at camp, right? And we would tell ghost stories. So I'm pretty sure, now I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that during camp that week, I must have heard the La Llorona story, right? So whatever. Now, each cabin has screened in windows, no glass, right? And they're all over the place. And there's just rows of bunk beds, right? So I'm in a bottom bunk and there's this kid above me in the top bunk. And so I'm asleep and all of a sudden I'm awoken by a bright light coming in the window, just super bright. And I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? And I remember waking up and then the kid is sitting above me, his feet are hanging down. He's awake too. So he jumps down, we go to the window, we're looking out the window. Now I've done all sorts of mid-journey images to try to like capture this. But standing in like a pillar of light in the middle of this like open space, because the camp is set around like a rectangle where you have like the gym and the food hall and then some of the cabins and offices, and there's like a middle square grassy area in the middle where we'd all run around and just meet and do our shit, right? And so in the middle of it, there's just this bright, shining column of light with this angelic figure, all in white. I cannot see her face. She seems to be emanating light to me, okay? Like she seems to be glowing. She's not walking on the ground, she's floating. And so we see her, and me and this both kid, we're both like, you see that, right? And so we're both like, yes, we see this woman. And we're like freaked out. Now, I can tell you, I'm scared because the first thought in
Yeah.
my head was, holy shit, it's La Llorona. As a 9-year-old boy, I'm like, oh my God, there she is. What do we do? I'm like freaked out, but we're just mesmerized watching her. And she just sort of floats across and goes into another cabin. Now, I don't remember if I don't think she like opened the door. I don't have any recollection of how she entered, but she entered the cabin, and then it was like someone had switched the lights on. The light was sort of beaming out of the cabin, out of the windows, right? So I'm like, holy shit, she's in there. Like, oh my God. And we're like freaking out. And I don't know how long she's in there, not too long. And then she comes out and she starts coming closer to us, goes into another cabin. And I'm like, holy fuck. And we're staring out the
That's
window.
so
What's
creepy.
happening? And then all of a sudden she comes out and she's heading right towards our cabin. And now I'm like, so I'm like, get in your bed. He jumps up in his bed. I jump into my bed. I pull the covers up and I'm laying there with my eyes closed. And I am shaking, Paul. I am terrified. I mean, I'm like closing my eyes, like, holy fuck. And I just remember being terrified. I'm shaking to death. And then all of a sudden I could feel the brightness in the room, right? And I'm like, oh God, oh God. And I could feel it getting brighter and brighter, like when you have your eyes closed and someone's putting a flashlight in your eye or whatever. You could feel the brightness. And I'm like, oh God, oh God. And then I look up and she's right there hovering over me. And I don't know if I screamed or yelled or something, but I freak out. And then she just telepathically talks in my head and says, it's okay, I'm here for my children, which was part of the La Llorona myth too. Like she's looking for her lost kids. And that's the last thing I remember. And so I'm just like, huh. The next thing I remember is it's the morning. I'm sitting on the edge of the bed and I'm just shaking and I'm just freaked out. And I don't remember waking up and like looking around, or I just remember the next thing I'm sitting on the edge of the bed and I'm like shaking and I'm just like, holy shit, holy shit. And the kids comes down and I'm like, did you see the La Llorona last night? And he's like, and he's also terrified to death. And we're like, oh my God. And everyone else in the room is like, wait, what? And we're like, and then right then it's like, oh, we got to go out and go eat breakfast. And the RA guys like gathering up the kids. And we just kind of follow the line and walk out. And I'm just in shock. Like, I don't know what to make of what I've just experienced. And then it's go about your day running around. And then the next day, my mom shows up, we pick up and we take off, we go home. I don't ever see this kid again. I, I, I don't know what to make of it. I try to tell people, oh my God, I saw La Llorona, and of course you tell people you were at camp and you saw La Llorona. They're like, whatever, kid, like, whatever. Right. So I'm like, holy shit, like this is crazy. I don't know what to make of this. Like I saw a ghost. I definitely saw a ghost. I saw, Sumerian apparition. Abso-fucking-lutely.
Did you see Kraft's comment? He said,
No, what did he
it's
say?
interesting because I wonder if you were Catholic, you'd have interpreted her as the lady instead.
Maybe.
So.
Certainly not Catholic. I had no Catholic upbringing at all. So all I could assemble in my mind was especially because I'd probably heard that La Llorona story that week. Now, once again, if she could have been anything and projecting into my mind the story of La Llorona, I don't know. I don't know if it was an actual lady or it was a fucking mantis who made me think she saw a lady. I don't know, but I'm thinking that. And the crazy thing is, so when I told this story to my mom and other people later, they think it was like, weirdly enough, the spirit of my sister. So this is where it gets really weird. So come back from that event, what the fuck? And like a week later, we take a little trip to San Diego. We come back. I have a little bit of water in my ear, and I have a small earache, and we're trying to put those drops in it and whatever. And then all of a sudden, one day, I just have this piercing, just brain, just, I can't even explain it. I still remember it was just like the worst pain, like I was dying, like in my brain. It was just, I was screaming, and I'm like, I'm in horrific pain. Now, the crazy thing is, I remembered all of this happening to me, but I never knew it was this day until I spoke to my mom. And that's part of the story I'll get to. But so I'm having this horrific pain. I mean, just feels like a fucking ice pick through my brain. My mom takes me to the hospital that day. My uncle's a doctor. He shows up. They don't know what's wrong with me. It's a small earache, but that's not it. And they've checked it out. It's a little irritated, but I don't think that's it. But so they scan me. They put me in. They think maybe I got a brain tumor or something. Something's up. Like it's like level 10 pain in my brain. And I'm just screaming. And so finally they just drug me. They just give me, God knows what they give a kid to just shut me down, but they just drug my ass and send us home with some antibiotics, right? The next morning I wake up. That night I had a vision, and it was the worst thing I could possibly imagine. Even talking about it, thinking about it, this is going to bum me out for the rest of the night. But so I have this vision of my sister. Now, my sister is 10 years older than me. So at this time, she's 19. She's like my mother because my mother works so much, single mom. And my sister takes care of me a lot, babysits a lot. And we are very, very close. We would sing together. She'd play me music. I mean, we would do all these things together. She was like my life. She was more my mother than my mother, and my mother will clearly admit that. So we're very connected. Now, looking back now, I think she was an experiencer, and I think that maybe we also had an experience or two together. And the reason I think this is because I have other memories where she was involved, and then she wrote all these weird letters that I looked at many years later, which I'll tell you another story later, that seemed to be she was sort of describing experiences that she couldn't understand, but also this connection that we had. So we had a very strong bond. And I have this nightmare of her being kidnapped, tortured, raped, and brutally murdered, fighting for her life, screaming, kicking. They're pulling her hair out. I see the men who are doing it to her. I see this other woman who's tied up there. I mean, it's a traumatic nightmare. I wake up from this nightmare and I'm shook. I'm 9 years old. I go running into my mom's room and I'm like, she's dead. She's dead. Leslie's dead. She's dead. She's dead. And my mother, she doesn't remember this, but she'll admit that it probably happened. Just yelled at me. She goes, "Don't you say that." And she just slaps me on the face. And now I'm like shut down because I've just had this traumatic, horrific thing that I've seen. And now she just slaps me when I try to explain to her what I had seen. And I just shut down. Now, I don't have any memories of the next few days whatsoever until, and this is a Tuesday, the day I had the hospitalization, the pain. Wednesday morning is when I tell her she's dead, she's dead. Saturday morning I wake up to, all I can describe it as the wailing. And I find out that my sister was killed. And now I'm just 9 years old, so I don't know any of the details. I don't know anything about what happened. I don't know anything. All I know is that she was dead, but I already knew. So I remember a couple times trying to explain to my uncle, who was a police officer, and my mother and my other uncle, who was a doctor, what I had experienced, because I felt like I know what happened. I know what happened. I know what they look like. I see them in my head, and no one paid any mind to me. I'm just a 9-year-old kid. Like no one, and my mom was just fucking in shock. Like she's just in shock. And so this becomes the defining moment of our lives, my whole family. I mean, it just changed literally everything. And I went into and maybe Craftbeard can explain this. I went mute for months. I didn't speak a word. I was completely in shock, PTSD. I couldn't communicate with people. I didn't know what to do, what to say. I just kept reliving this thing over and over in my mind. And I mean, it's your worst nightmare. I mean, literally the worst nightmare. And I'm just sort of reliving it over and over and over. And I'm checked out. When I talked with my mom about it recently, and she was like, "Oh yes, you were almost catatonic." She said, "We were sending you off to this, to some, whether it was a shrink or a counselor, I don't know, but to see someone, and they had to lie to my brother, tell him that I was seeing a football coach because no one wanted to talk about your brother is like mentally ill. Like they didn't know what was wrong with me." And my brother, for many years, was jealous that I got to go to some football coach. And it was many years later, I was like, "Bro, I wasn't going to some football coach. That was like they were head shrinking me because I was all fucked up." My brother, who was a year younger than me, he did not experience. He doesn't even remember any of this, the death. I mean, he remembers that our sister died, but he just, like, everything about that time is blocked for him. But me, I couldn't help but remember everything, and it was just scarred me for life. And so that whole story, what happens from there on out, I mean, it ends up going through 3 trials. This is why we moved to Angel Fire. He had put hits out on my mother. He was connected. I mean, these were murderous bastards. And this went on and on.
So crazy.
Until we moved up to Angel Fire in '79, because my mom wanted to get us out of Albuquerque because she was afraid for her life. And so I never understood that maybe this white lady incident was sort of connected to my sister a few weeks later, because I had this thing that I didn't understand, right? And it wasn't until the mid 90s they had a 3rd trial. So this fuckhead gets out of, it's a long story, but he basically got all the evidence from the 70s had been destroyed. He made up some bullshit. They ended up saying, "Okay, well, we don't have any evidence from the old trial, so we're just going to let him out." And my mom was like, "Oh, no, no, no." So she brought out all these files. She had all the files, the original testimony. A lot of these people were dead now, drug addicts, all this shit. And like goes and starts digging up people. I mean, this was on court TV. I mean, it was a big deal. They were going to write a book about my mom, all the shit she had gone through, because like she basically, when my sister died, just sort of abjugated responsibility for her kids. Me and my brother just sort of fell through the wayside. We were just surviving. And she'll admit, she just stopped being a mother to us because she was so bent on revenge, making sure that Stump paid. Yeah, she was like, he is not getting away with this. And so that was her focus. And I get it, but I was resentful for many, many years because I was like, "Mom, you just left us. You just abandoned us. Like when we needed you most." So it was a rough thing. So when we went through all this stuff, like I was like, I have questions, Mom. So I start asking her, I start telling her, it's the first time I told her about the lady, and I told her all that. And then I said, "And did you know that I had this vision the night of and all this stuff?" And she goes, "Oh, well, you know, I remember that day like it was yesterday. I'm like, what day? The day your sister went missing. I'm like, really? What do you remember about it? She goes, well, you had this horrible pain in your brain and you were screaming and yelling and you were ranting and we didn't know what was wrong with you and you were having all this physical pain. And I was like, Mom, I was connected to Leslie. And I was like, that's that night after you guys drugged me, I came home. That night I had the vision where I saw everything. And the next morning I came to you and you slapped me and she's like, oh, I don't remember that. And she goes, and I said, well, what time was it? And my mom knows the whole timeline of sequence of events that my sister was captured. Literally the moments that my sister was starting to be tortured and knew she was going to die, I was somehow connected. And so my mom was like freaked out because she's like, oh my God, well, this was happening to you. This was happening to you. This was happening to you. And I know now because of the timeline, that was when this was happening to her. That was when this was happening to her. And I was like, Mom, I was connected to it all. That's why I was so fucked up. And it was the first time I was ever able to explain to her why I went catatonic and all that, because a 9-year-old boy shouldn't just switch off everything about life because someone says, hey, your sister died. You're not going to really understand it. You know, it's not going to compute. And I had this horrific vision. And so all of a sudden she's like, oh my God, you did. And so I went through everything about it with her. And she started explaining what was happening on her end and what I was doing and how all the timeline and all the pieces fit together. And then I'm like, well, Mom, do you know what and I go, I know that she was thinking of me when she was being killed. I know she was thinking of me. Maybe that's why we were connected. She wasn't calling out to you. She was calling out to me. And I go, I know that in my heart. And we were talking about it. And I go, and now that we're discussing this, another piece of the puzzle falls into my brain. So on the third trial, like I had grown up knowing that this guy and a couple others had killed my sister. But the one guy in particular were the trigger man and the rapist. You know, I had hate bottled up in my heart, Paul. Like all I knew is that I want to kill this guy. He ruined my life. He killed my sister. It's destroyed me and I want payback. So all of a sudden when the guy like was getting another trial, now I'm in my mid-20s, late 20s. And I was with my soon to be wife at that point. And I'm like, well, we're going to be there every day at the trial. So my mom's there, I'm there, my sister's there. My brother was like, nope, I don't want any part of this. A few other family members and his family was there and court TV's there. And there's all these cameras and it's in the news all day long because her dad was a very big name person in the aerospace industry, blah, 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 all that stuff. So it's like, it's a huge fucking deal, right? Now, my middle name is Andrew, but after my sister died, because my dad was John and I had an older brother named John. So I was lucky I wasn't John the third. I had a different middle name. So growing up, I was Andy. That was it. Until my sister died, I was Andrew or Andy. That's it. Nobody called me John. The last thing in the fucking world I wanted to be called was John. My dad was not in our lives. He didn't give a fuck about us. So I was like, nope, no John. And that was what my sister called me, Andy, Andrew. When my sister died, I couldn't hear the name Andrew. I couldn't do it. It was too painful because that was her name for me. And I didn't explain this to anyone in my family at all. I was just like, after she died, when I finally, a couple months later, came out of this catatonic state, was able to talk to people, I was like, I'm John. And they're like, what? No, yeah, John, you're Andrew. I'm like, nope, don't call me Andrew. Don't fucking call me Andrew. I'm not Andy. I'm not Andrew. My name is John. And I forced everyone in my family, my friends, but everyone to just, that's it. I'm done. I'm not John. I'm not Andrew anymore. I'm John. And the crazy thing is, the first time my name will ever come up in the record was before the second trial of this guy. The news was doing a story with my mother, and I was sitting on her lap or something. I was there. I was 10 at this point. And I only know this because my daughter, that's a whole nother story, but my daughter ended up reading all the case files and all this kind of stuff because I have the box that contains everything about my sister, her favorite stuff, her letters, her poems, her everything. I called it Pandora's box. I kept it for decades because my mom, after that third trial, was like, I can't even look at that box. I don't want the box. She was going to throw everything away. I'm like, no, 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 I'll take it. But I was never, I never had the power to open it. I was terrified of that box. It was literally Pandora's box. And so during COVID, my daughter was like, well, Dad, she wanted to hear about Leslie. She wanted to hear about the story. And I was like, babe, it's rough. It's going to be hard on me. I'm happy to tell you, you're old enough now. She wants to be an FBI agent. So she was like, I want to know about it. And I'm like, well, I can tell you what I go, I don't know everything. Grandma's the one that really knows everything. I go, I was a kid. It's not something we talked about. Like, we didn't sit around and like, Mom, tell me what was going on with the first trial and blah, blah, blah. We just did not talk about that. And she goes, well, what about that box? I'm like, what box? She goes, that box, Leslie's stuff in the garage. I'm like, oh shit. I go, I don't know what's in that box. That's Pandora's box. I've never opened it. I go, I'm not strong enough. And my daughter was like, Dad, I'll do it with you. I'll open it with you. And I was like, oh, wow. I'm like, well, that's the only way I can do it is if you're there with me, honey. But I go, just so you know, I can't go through everything. There's certain things I can't relive. I don't want to know. So we started going through it. And it was so cathartic because all of a sudden I'm reading letters. My sister she was a wild child also. She had been run away a few times, had been to some like sort of group home place that was out of state. Her dad put her in to like get her clean and whatever. And so she was writing letters, beautiful handwritten letters to all the family members. And all these letters are in there and all that. And that's where a couple of these stories, I was like, holy shit, that sounds very much like a little abduction or something there, alien sightings. But my daughter starts reading these because she goes, do you want to read these letters? I'm like, oh no, I can't read those. No fucking way. She goes, well, can I read them to you? And I was like, okay. So she starts reading me these letters. And it was like, all of a sudden I'm hearing my sister's voice coming out of my daughter, and she's reading this letter, and it's just, and the emotional pain she has in the, and I'm just like, oh. So we do all this stuff and it's just so emotional. But then she brings out these files, just all these files of the court cases and all the news clippings, everything. And she starts going, Dad. And I'm like, no, 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 I can't. I go, I can't read the descriptions. I don't want to hear one word. I go, it's already burned into my brain. I go, you can read it, but don't you tell me anything. I can't do it. So I'm sitting over on the couch watching TV. She spreads everything out in front of her, like, you see in the movies, like literally like an agent. She's got everything in piles. She's got all this stuff. So she starts reading through the witness testimony. And every once in a while, she just go, Dad. And I'm like, don't say a word. She goes, Dad. I'm like, I know. Please don't say anything. She's like, oh. And then she'd keep reading. And she's like, Dad. I'm like, babe, you're killing me. I'm like, I can't. So finally one time she goes, no, Dad, I have to. I'm like, what? She goes, you're in here. I'm like, what do you mean I'm in there? She goes, you're quoted in here. I'm like, what? And she pulls out this story. Now, when the first news stories were coming out, it said she is survived by her siblings, Andrew Strader, right? Now it's 6 months later, maybe 7, 8 months later. There's going to be another trial. First trial was hung jury. There's an interview with the Journal, the newspaper, where this lady is talking to my mother about all this. And then I guess I was sitting right there and she quoted me in this news story. I'm like, so what do I say? And I don't remember exactly the context, but she asked me something about what do you remember, something about all that. And I just said, well, nothing will ever be the same. So it was John Strader. The little quote was something, and nothing will ever be the same. As a 10-year-old, I knew that. And she read that to me, and I looked at her and I said, babe, and nothing ever was. And then I'm like, I got to call my mother. So I call my mom. I tell her what we're doing. She's like, you're going through the box. Oh my God. She starts having a panic attack. I'm like, Mom, I'm quoted in here. And it was the first time. My name is John Strader. And I read that quote to her and she said the exact same. She goes, and nothing ever was. And
Wow.
that's the truth. That's nothing ever was the same again. So one last thing. So we're
Yeah.
in this fucking trial, right? And there's that fuckhead. And I'm like seething with rage. Like it is bubbling up in me. Like, and anyone who knows me knows John is not an angry, rageful person. But I didn't talk about this pain to my friends, or you know what I mean? This was like people had heard, oh yeah, your sister was killed, but that was about all they really knew. We didn't talk about this. It was brutal. Like I couldn't relive it. Even my best friends. And so that motherfucker is sitting there. Sorry to cuss. I see his face. And he turns around at one point in the trial. He goes, "You're Andy, aren't you? You're Andrew. She died screaming your name, screaming for you, Andy, Andy."
Oh
And
God.
and I just
Oh my
freak out.
God.
And I just leap over the thing and just attack him. And I'm like, no, I mean, I'm punching, I'm ready to fucking strangle him to death in that
Rightfully
courtroom.
so.
And I
Holy
hadn't heard anybody call me Andy in 20 years. You know what I
wow.
mean? And to hear her killer call me Andy, I knew, holy shit, she was calling out for me during this
The way
horrible,
you
like
had
during
envisioned in your head. Yeah.
the last moments of her life, she was crying to me. And he knew that
Insane.
I was that person as now this full aged adult. And so I attack him and they pull us off. The bailiff pulls me off and the judge pulls me in a chamber. And the judge is like, what the fuck? Like, I'm gonna have to throw you out of here. I'm gonna have to, like, he's yelling at me. I'm like, Judge, put me on the stand. He just admitted because he said she died screaming. He said she died crying my name. I'm a witness. He just fucking confessed. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, that won't work. You can't do that. And I need to keep you guys. And I'm like, freaked out. I'm like, he just admitted it to me. I will go on the stand right now. Like, put me on the stand. This judge was the worst. And so he's like, look, I won't throw you out. Okay, I could see how that would set you off. So we're just going to separate the families. His family will come up the back stairs. We'll keep you guys sequestered. You won't have to interact with each other and whatever. And they kept us separated for the rest of the time. But that's when I knew that my experience, it was all connected. It was all real.
Right.
So
Well, firstly, I want to say condolences and sorry to
holy
your
shit.
family for that, because it's never easy to lose somebody and to have like that soul connection and to be right about a lot of it
Yeah.
is probably the hardest thing that anybody could really go through. So, John, my heart goes out to you personally, man, and your
Thanks,
family
man.
and your sister. And I think she's definitely still in your heart. I can see it. I can
Oh yeah.
definitely see that in you, man.
Thank you.
And honestly, I think this would be a good place for us to wrap
Yeah.
and kind of find a
Yeah.
way to incorporate a part two on this one because I don't want to have you go down a
That's
deeper
it's a
path
great
on this
stopping
one.
point. I don't know how much
Yeah,
more I got in me now. I'm all like, oh, choked up.
that's heavy, man. That's so heavy. Everybody in the chat is like giving you their love. Throw John some
Thank you.
hearts in the chat, peeps. But John,
You know,
let me
even
let. Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, no, no.
Uh,
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you one or two more questions before we wrap. What message do you have for experiencers like yourself who have been through the trauma from all gambits of the spectrum of phenomenology? What advice would you give in terms of people struggling with this, and where do you see the topic moving from this point in
Whew.
time to next year? So those are my two questions
All right.
I would love for you to answer.
Let's stick with number one first. See if I can. I guess for me, it's like don't assume you know what happened. Like don't jump to conclusions because they are very powerful. These entities, and whether it's a technology they use or whether it's straight telepathy or who knows what. Um, like I tell you all these stories, but I don't know. I can't like tell you what it means. I can't tell you I know exactly what happened. I tried to always still remain skeptical and not jump to this happened. This means this, or I'm special, or I'm chosen, or
Right.
I do. And so many people do that, and or feel like if I was a different person and I had this download, I could have written a book saying, I have all the answers. I know everything. I could be Corey Good or I could be Wilcock or anyone saying, I know exactly what's happening here. I know what's going on. I've received the information. So I know it's real. And I guess for me, it's be skeptical. We don't we don't know. We don't know. I don't
Yes.
know if they're angels. I don't know if they're demons. I don't know if they're gods. I don't know if they're just advanced humans. I don't know if they're just us on a different part of the timeline and they're just manipulating. I mean, I have my own theories, but those are my personal theories and I had to craft a sort of science fiction narrative around it so that I can talk about it without being an answer or a truth because I don't think anyone has the answer. I don't think anyone has the truth. I think we all have little pieces of the puzzle, and you have to take your experience and see where it fits in the entire echelon of
Yeah.
other stories, experiences, and see what meshes, what doesn't. Like, but like I have a hard time when I hear people saying, "I see a gray," and he talks to me, and we have these conversations. Like, well, I've never had that, so I'm not discounting it, but
Right.
it doesn't meet my world view and my experiences. So I kind of put that in. Okay, well, that's your experience. I can't take much more from that, and I have to just see what matches the things that I've seen, what matches the things that I've experienced, and how they fit into this puzzle. But to the problem is it's very easy to get overwhelmed, and it's very easy to lose faith or lose hope. Um, and I feel like that's the thing I never have done is kind of lose faith in my own ability to understand or to take in the information or kind of lose hope because the download I received, it's not great. It's not like Shangri-La, like we're in a bad part of the timeline. Like that's why when they have the doomer spaces, we talk about doom. Like I saw very scary visions for the future, but also very positive things. And like when you zoom all the way out for me, and I take us and our little moment in this timeline, that yeah, it sucks here, but when you look the information I was given, like the overall picture is pretty amazing. It's pretty intense.
Right.
And we're a very integral and important part of all this. But us having the knowledge and understanding it isn't part of that plan. It's not in the government's plan for us to know. So I don't think it's in their plans for us to really know. And whether or not you experience conversations or the voice of God coming to you or telepathic communication, like how do you trust that source? They're not in the open. They're not out there. They're not revealing themselves. So to me, that makes me suspect. You know what I'm saying? So I try not to believe everything, and I try to be very
Right.
skeptical, and especially of my own experiences. I can't say I know really anything, and the more I learn, the more questions I have. So I guess my advice would be like beware people who claim to have all the answers. I
I love
don't.
that answer.
I don't
No, I
have
love
any.
that answer. John, and the last question here, where do you see all of this disclosure movement in a year? And it's a sincere question.
Woo!
I know a lot of people have that reaction, but we're trying to gather like
Well,
I guess you can say a survey of what people think whenever we ask that question. So I just want to
well,
know what
it
you
makes
think.
me think of a larger question of kind of why I'm here, Paul, because that was something we sort of talked about a little bit, which if we do a question, a second part or something, we can go into. But like for me, like I said, until I decided to join UFO Twitter, I did not want to be on a list. I did not want to be seen researching. I was very safe. I was very afraid of the government and the agents and the agencies, because I knew that we were dealing with something that they would do anything to keep quiet. So for me, like I was always looking at certain YouTube channels and certain things and ignoring others that were like, I've got all the answers. Let me tell you all about the Orions and let me tell you all about that. I'm like,
Right.
no, not, I'm staying away from that. But I kept
Uh-huh.
digging into the nuts and bolts. But for me, it was like, I felt like whatever I've experienced, whatever I've been given, there's always been this desire to share and to try to understand. And I felt like as a dude all alone, and this is what I want to give back to everyone else, is that as someone for decades who felt literally all alone in this topic, um, it was so amazing for me to find a community of people who don't immediately judge you, who have had similar experiences or very different experiences, who are trying to understand what's going on. And for me, when that 2017 happened and it brought so many people in, I'd already given up. I was out. I'd given up, come back many times in my years, because I was like, there's nothing new. I've been told by other people, that's a whole nother story. Like, this is never coming out. You're never going to know. Why are you wasting your time on this? And I was like, I have this need to understand. That's what I was searching for when the download came. And, and so I felt all alone, but I would be watching these podcasts and I'd hear them talk about, oh yeah, this broke on UFO Twitter. Oh, and then this broke, and every YouTube channel I was watching was basically reporting the shit that was happening here on Twitter, which
Right.
this isn't Twitter,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean,
Yeah.
on Spaces and in Twitter, and I felt like, damn, like I'm so connected to this. I've got so much knowledge. I've been doing this for so long, and now there's all these people in it and they're talking about it, and there's actual government people coming out and spilling beans and releasing videos, and there's news being dropped, and I feel out of the loop. And I was like, fuck, man, I don't want to be out of the loop. Like, me, I should not be out of the loop. I should be right in the loop. And I had friends of mine who knew. They're like, dude, you should start a podcast, you should this, you should that. I'm like, no. I go, but I need to be listening. So that's when I joined Twitter. It was 4.5 years ago, whatever. Kind of late to the party, really, for Twitter, but because I hate social media, I don't have really anything. So I was like, oh, and my friends were like, "You're joining Twitter? You? What the hell? You said you'd never." I'm like, only UFO Twitter and only for that, and
Yeah.
so it wasn't until I found Spaces, and they were very early on, Paul, and I was just listening. I was just a listener for so long. And I'm listening in, and I was like, oh my God, I've been waiting for something like this my whole life. A place where
I
people
love
can
it.
talk about this, they can share, they can agree, they can disagree, they can debate, but we can talk. But I knew, this goes back to Mindy earlier saying, do you think you're on the list? I knew. I go, well, if I sign up and I get on UFO Twitter, I'm on the list. But at that point, I felt like the secret, and when I'm talking about the secret, I mean what the government and the agencies and the aerospace companies have been keeping for over 80 years, the secrets that we're not alone and that there's things happening here that we're not aware of and that we're living a fake history. I felt like at this point, if them are worried about me, then they're fucked. Like, who am I? I'm nobody. I never was in a program. I wasn't written into anything. I'm a nobody. So at this point, I felt like they have bigger fish to fry. Like, like I feel like I got to get off the sidelines and I got to help other people catch up. Not try to convince anyone of anything, not try to tell my version of the story or make anyone believe anything, but just to try to be a voice of reason kind of in some of these spaces early on. And I
Mhm.
will say this, the community has gotten so much smarter over the last 4 years. I used to listen to spaces where people would be talking about classic cases and this and that, and they were getting everything wrong. And it used to drive me crazy. I'm like, oh my God. So I'd come into the space. I felt like I'm the old man, the curmudgeon coming in here to be like, you kids don't know shit. Let me tell you something. But I have learned so much listening to people in the spaces and hearing other people's experiences and being open to never shutting anyone down, whether I think they're nuts
Right.
or not. I feel like that's the thing. You have to be able to be open to take a little bit of everything in so you can decide where to sort of vet it, where you want to put it on your own hierarchy of lists of what you're going to buy into and what you're not, you know? And so that's kind of how I got here. And so I still feel like there's a lot of games being played, a lot of gamesmanship being played. But I've said from the beginning, and I'm going to end with this, I don't feel like we're going to get true disclosure unless they decide. I don't think that we're going to be able to scratch around at the doors of it. I don't think Congress is going to get any. It doesn't matter about Lou Elizondo or Chris Mellon or any of these fucking people. Don't mean a goddamn thing. They're all just wanting access to the money. They don't give a fuck about whether or not we
Totally.
learn anything real. They know that they're written out of the game and they want to be part of the game. I don't want to be part of the game. Not
Right.
interested. Nope. So I'm low information on that, but I feel like whatever they are doing, whatever they're up to, I've felt that it's coming to a head. And I don't like predictions. Everyone's naming dates and this, and a lot of people making predictions. But I have felt this since I got in that we do seem to be heading towards some kind of singularity, some kind of download, some sort of event, whether it's they just unmask and they decide to say they're here, or there's an event that's just seen by too many people to discount it. Like, I don't know. Something is up. And that's why I got off the sidelines. That's why I never went anonymous, because I felt like if anyone's going to take me serious or real, I can't just be a shadowy figure on the internet, even though it has put me at risk and I have had shit happen to me. I felt like that Twitter spaces are kind of the front lines of disclosure. And I'm getting up there. So I felt like I needed to get off the sidelines and get involved. And so that's why I'm here. It's why I'm willing to share these personal stories. It's not for clicks. It's not for, I'm not trying to make money. I'm not out there doing anything. I just trying to be a voice in the wilderness.
Well, John, today's episode was really, really great. I urge you, share it around if you can, and everybody in the chat, thank you so much for supporting John tonight. This was a really, really good story, and I want to thank you again, John, for
Thank you,
really
Paul.
being vulnerable and sharing everything tonight. So um, make sure you follow John, the UFO Hotspot, and his personal account as well.
Swiss Army
He's been
Uber at
Yes, it's
Swiss
all going
Army
to be
Uber.
there in the description. And he's been doing some good work at the National UFO Historical Records, so make
That's a
sure to
whole
check
nother
that
thing.
out. Yeah, we're gonna have to do that part 2, John. But
There's a lot. There's
anyways,
a lot.
everybody, thank you so much again for joining the Portal Room, and have a good night. Peace, everyone.
Thank you, Paul. Bye, everybody.